What's up? Gaming Memories is back straight from the quarantine, bitches. Have you been practicing your social distancing? Because I am the designated hall monitor of this here society. I am the prophet, the duly anointed, and you guys know the drill. I have been commissioned by the gaming gods themselves, Miyamoto the Father, Kojima the Son, and Carmack, the Holy Ghost, to create the one true gaming podcast simply by interviewing creative and interesting people about their favorite gaming memories growing up. And on this episode of the podcast, I have the double bro down special from the boys over at the Retrohangover podcast. Christian Shane, they've been doing their thing since 2015. Some OGs of the podcast game. Not to mention they're both OG gaming nerds. Both born, one born in 86, I believe, and 85 if my memory serves correct. Born around the same time as me. A lot of the listeners are similar age, so the games that they go through, starting with generally the NES, I won't ruin some of the surprise because one of them didn't have the NES as their first console, which came as a surprise. But we go through a lot of games that I'm sure will be familiar to a bunch of you, and all in all, we had a grand old time. We go balls deep into JRPGs. JRPGs, look, I said I'm going to drink for my intros because every time I drink a lot, people tell me my intros are better. So I said JRPGs. That's okay because JRPGs are fucking cheesy and I'm into the cheese. Give me mixed, shredded, Mexican, pepper jack, Swiss. I want it all, bitch. Put it all together. That's what I want. JRPGs. Actually, I talk a little bit about anime and how I don't like anime and some certain aspects of the cheesiness of anime I tolerate because anime has dope action scenes, dope premises, and a lot of times a really dope style in general. That's how I feel about JRPGs. Even when I was growing up, there was definitely things that I tolerated, but the things that I loved so much, I would put up with quite a bit. And the problem is, now that I'm older, I don't have as much time to put up with bullshit I don't like. I only have so much time. I don't want to fill it with something that I love 50% of the time and 50% of the time I tolerate. That's why I'm stoked for the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which we had mixed opinions on the episode of the podcast. Yeah, I was going to rant a little bit more about coronavirus and shit, but I'm not really feeling it, to be honest with you. I think that's a waste of time. I want these episodes to be timeless. Let's just say this. Because I am a prophet, and I'm about the profits, which I have been making bank during the coronavirus, fiasco, epidemic, pandemic. I've been making bank. Look, if you have some disposable income, I still think you can be smart with it. Don't take my advice. I'm a drunk dude that you don't even know who he is. But I will say this. I knew that the coronavirus was going to stall the stock market. So I just take this advice. I think it's fair advice. It's what I'm doing myself. So far, it has worked. I don't feel bad about telling you because I want everyone to at least get something out of this. Look at a stock or a cryptocurrency. It'd be really hard with cryptocurrency, but look at a stock that has been really stable for 5 years. Maybe a few up and downs, but if it's been stable for 5 years and it's been moving up generally on average for the last 5 years, then it dropped more than 50% since like March 1st, February 28th, 29th. Put some money in that because chances are, it's not 100% guarantee, but chances are that shit going to rebound at least back to where it was or close to back to where it was. I've been shooting for things that at least were half. So let's say Delta Airlines was like, I don't remember what it was. Let's say, for example, it was $80. I only bought when it was below 40, and it was only below 40 for a short period of time. It doesn't mean that there aren't other stocks out there that fit that criteria. There's so many stocks. I'm sure you could find one that still, even at this point, even though the market's recovered a little bit, there still could be some shit going on. It could dip again. But I think that if you look at something that's been relatively stable for the last 5 years, drops below 50%, there's a good chance the economy will recover in a semi-short period of time and you will get that money back. That's all I'll say about coronavirus. I want to be positive. Instead of gloom and doom, look, there's a way that you can turn this into a little bit of a blessing. I don't want to say blessing, though. That's kind of messed up. I saw a post about a woman who was basically framing her son sent home from an LDS mission as a blessing from God, an angel in the form of the COVID-19 virus, saved her son and sent her son home early from, Man, it's a terrible thing that's happening. I don't know how bad it really is. Sometimes there's some evidence out there that the death rate is not as bad as it seems, which is, I like good news. I like to be optimist. Coming out of Germany, I think besides South Korea, you might want to definitely anything that comes out of my mouth, you're going to want to fucking fact check. Don't listen to me for shit, only for entertainment purposes. And if something I say sparks your curiosity, definitely don't take my word for it. Do your due diligence. But I believe either the number one country or the number two country as far as robust testing is Germany. It might be South Korea as number one, but Germany, I think the number in the article I read on NPR, which is a fairly fucking credible source, not perfect, but fairly credible, is 120,000 tests a week. Now, their death rate was 0.5%. They're testing way more people. And there's been some definitely experts chiming in their opinions that have been talking about severity bias, which is essentially most of the people in the beginning, because we were trying to conserve testing and the infrastructure wasn't really there to react to the pandemic, was focused on only testing people who had direct contact, especially in the beginning, who had recently traveled to China or direct contact with another known positive test. So we weren't really testing that many people. Meanwhile, Germany's like, yes, we are all Spocks. We think with our brain only perfect efficiency. That is the worst goddamn German accent of all time. I don't even know what that was. Forgive me. I'm a prophet. I can't make mistakes. Just let that one slide. But the point is, the Germans were like Ivan Drago, who's actually Russian, but it's the same shit. They're both white. Look, we can lump white people together. It's not racist. You can say whatever you want. All fucking white people look the same. Ivan Drago and Hitler, same shit in my book. Can't judge me for that. They're both white. The point is, the Germans, pure efficiency, pure logic, just start testing everybody. 120K tests a week, ramping up. They have a whole shit ass ton of positive cases. They're not doing social distancing. They're hanging out at the park. They don't give a shit. Why? 0.5%. That's actually still pretty damn high if everyone gets infected. But the point is, that's good news, because there have been estimates, especially in the beginning when it was first happening, there were some crazy ass estimates I saw, like 18%. If it was 18%, we'd all be fucked. Luckily, it's not. And luckily, we got lucky this time. I'm super grateful that in South Korea, Taiwan, and Germany, the death rate is looking to be a lot lower than initially expected. And I think that, and NPR postulates the same thing, is most likely due to the fact that as testing gets better and severity bias, which is only the most symptomatic people are getting tested, and there's a lot of people who are asymptomatic, meaning they don't show any symptoms, or they're like mild symptoms and they don't go get tested because it's pretty close to a common cold. They can't tell the difference. They're not exactly sure. They're not getting labeled as official cases. So only the most severe cases are getting labeled as official cases, and the most severe cases are also the most likely to result in a death, which is unfortunate. And then by no means do I want to minimize anyone who's been has a personal death. That's stresses me out. My brother has heart failure. His doctors basically say if he gets it, he's fucking dunzo. He's fuck city. I'm not making a light of it, but the good news is it may not be as bad as we initially thought. So that's not popular. Here's my theory. People like bad news. I asked my wife this. My wife is a rock star. Listen to this. I have a theory that people secretly want this to be crazy. You know how everyone makes the jokes like it would be badass if the zombie apocalypse happened? Why do we make that joke? Why do we love The Walking Dead? Why is the thought of societal collapse? Every goddamn sci-fi movie is like post-apocalyptic, some sort of shit, ruins society, it all breaks down. I think that we're all trapped. We're all too spoiled. We're all just like these little bitches in fluffy beds of silk and refined sugar and Netflix, and we're just like aching to have it all torn down because, I don't know, god damn it, it's too easy. But the point is I think people actually want things to be worse. It's crazy. It's almost like a real life global gossip. We all can get online and we can talk about coronavirus. Everything can be crazy. Everything's buzzing. It's crazy. It's unprecedented. It's exciting. It's new. It's different, but it's also scary. But we want things to be scary because life's too easy. Anyway, I asked my wife, if you're being totally honest with yourself, is some aspects of this whole coronavirus debacle, coronavirus pandemic exciting? And she's like, yeah, it is exciting because I don't know, where I'm talking to my family more. It's different. It's where life at home is different. We're making some improvements. Some things are annoying, but it's scary, but it's exciting. And obviously, mainstream news is, look, it's a business. It's an entertainment business. Not only am I making money on the stock market, but we do market. Like, look, the marketing people are making a hella cash on this. And good news does not drive clicks. And that's because deep down, all of us, it's like, I think we're all pessimists by nature. My good friend told me his idea behind this is the pessimists are the one who survived back in the day because the optimists got eaten by tigers and shit. The people who weren't paying attention just lackadaisical, like, yeah, life's so good. Fuck it. Who cares? I'm going to go eat this berry. I'm not going to pay attention to my surrounding. Snatch! Tiger from the back of the bushes snatches him up. I just got a house cat. Those things are little killers. It's a kitten. It's a baby little kitten. And when it plays with me, it's so fast. Anyway, I could see, look, back in the day, guaranteed, if you weren't paying attention, a big cat could fuck you up before you even know what's happening. And I think the people that were full of anxiety and fear and pessimists and preparing for the future, they are the ones that survived and passed their genes on, more likely than not. So now we're all these anxiety-ridden, and then this pandemic happens. Who knows? I don't know what's happening. I don't even know how I got on this topic. I told myself I wasn't going to rant. The point being is I don't even know what the point being is. Oh, yeah, the point being is let's be a little positive. I know we're wired to be negative. The whole internet marketing world is wired to make money off sensationalism. It's a big problem. We should be worried. Stay safe. If you're high risk, definitely don't fucking go outside. Go home. If you live with someone, you visit people, you hang out with people who are high risk, don't go outside. And as long as the experts are saying everybody shouldn't go outside, I'd err on the side of following the experts, but the silver lining in the sand is the death rate may not be as bad as we think because of severity virus. Who cares? Let's get to some video games. The Retro Hangover dudes are badasses. JRPG games from 85 to current. Check their podcast out. I will put all the applicable links in the podcast description. If you want to look for them right now, Retro Hangover, just type it into the search bar, whatever podcast platform. They're on all of them. Instagram, Twitter, whatever. Retro Hangover. Chris, Shane, badasses. Enjoy the show. I say these things, and me, Mother the Father, which you the Son, and Carmack the Holy Ghost. Love you. Amen. Bye-bye. All right. Retro Hangover. You guys have been around since 2015.
Yes.
That sounds about right.
Kind of.
Yeah.
What prompted you so early? That was kind of during the podcast boom, I guess. You're an early adopter. I'm just a trendy wannabe.
I mean, we might have been an early adopter, but I feel like we also kind of missed the boat on that one because we took a little bit of a hiatus. So now we're coming back during the boom. So I don't know how I feel about that, but things are going all right.
We're having fun.
Yeah. I think that's what's important.
How do you guys know each other?
We originally started hanging out, I guess. There's a video game, like, I would call it a party, like the video game party. I forgot exactly what it was called. Do you remember what it was called, Shane?
Oh, shit.
Arcade Jacks? Arcade Jacks.
Yeah, there you go. That's what it was. It's been so long now, and I'm old, so.
Yes. And so we started hanging out around 2014, maybe late 2013. It was just a group of people in the gaming community in Jacksonville that went to this bar downtown where essentially just there's a bunch of arcade games and a bunch of video games, and our Nintendo host, the guy who's with us for our Nintendo segments on our podcast, he hosted it, and it was always a good time. We just met up there, and we became friends that way, and eventually it led to having drinks at various other bars, and we were like, hey, our conversations are pretty cool. Let's have a podcast.
Yeah, we ended up having people actually kind of like stop into our conversations while we were sitting at the bar or whatever and start joining in, talking about like, I remember that Nintendo. Yeah. And I'm just like, well, I mean, I guess if people want to hear us talk about this shit, then we might as well do it. So,
yeah, that's interesting. When I just my group of friends that they were basically the same thing. People are interested in video games more than I initially thought. Mm-hmm. And out of the same thing, I would be hanging out with friends, we'd be talking to some shit, and then strangers would join the conversation because they were also interested in whatever the game was or the new studio or whatever. And I'm like, wow, it's bigger than I thought. Everybody games, it seems like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, even down to, Candy Crush on your phone, I guess. That's
True.
That's a dated reference.
I don't
now,
count
isn't it?
that. That doesn't count.
People still play Candy Crush. Don't hate.
I mean, I guess. I don't know.
That's going to be an episode of ours in like 9 years. So
Oh, God. That's when we have officially jumped the shark.
looking forward to it.
Retrohangover will be over by the time we start talking about Candy Crush. No, but the Arcade Jacks thing was cool, though. They had, like, chiptune DJs and stuff there, and like retro consoles set up with like CRTs and stuff. So it was pretty legit. Unfortunately, I guess it was just a big time commitment for the guy that was running it, and so he kind of had to step back. And no one's really filled that void. So maybe someday, or maybe it will be us.
That'd be cool.
Maybe it could be you. So you guys are in. It sounds like you're in You said Jacksonville, Florida.
Jacksonville, yeah.
Yeah, Jacksonville,
Where's that located in Florida for us dummies?
South Georgia.
Where?
And if you're not being a dick about it, it's like northeast Florida.
Northeast.
Yes.
Okay. And does all the quote Florida man stuff happen in a concentrated area of Florida, like Miami, or is it all over Florida? You're in danger of running into just the craziest shit at any time could happen.
Oh, it's all over.
It's pretty much anywhere. Yeah, he gets around. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just in our backyard, we have Middleburg, and even where I'm at, it's not quite Middleburg, but it's basically Middleburg. That's pretty much a meth emporium. If you want to find meth, you can get it in Middleburg. I mean, just the name of it sounds. I mean, that's where Leonard Skinner came from, so you already know you're in that part of the world.
Also, he's bringing this up because that's where I live right now, and he's an asshole.
Okay.
It's not a lie, though. You know it's the truth.
No, it's 100% accurate. Yes.
Why is from your perspective, as you guys grow up in Florida lifelong?
No,
I did not know.
Neither of us.
Nope.
Where are you guys from originally?
Shane, go ahead.
Chris, you want to go?
I'll answer
Well,
that.
shit.
No, I'll go.
Go.
I grew up outside of Chicago originally. I grew up in a city called Wheaton. It's about 30, 40 miles southwest of Chicago, in DuPage County. Real more of an upper scale kind of area. It still gets just as cold, though. And yeah, I lived there for my entire childhood, and then I turned 18, joined the Navy, and they shipped me off to Florida, where I've essentially been for my entire adult life.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. Liked it enough to stay.
In Florida? Well, I've just been...
He's over there making faces.
I've been lucky enough to be stationed here. I'll put it that way. It's just...
Okay.
It's kind of just luck instead of choice. There's choice, but mostly luck.
And where are you from?
Yeah, so I was originally from Maine, actually. I was born and raised there and lived there until I was about, I want to say 25 or so-ish. Then I ended up moving down here to Florida. The short version of that story is I ended up picking up some property out here in the country from my cousin who owned it at the time, and he wanted to move closer in town. And it was like basically the same amount of money I was paying for a 2-bedroom apartment in Maine. So I was like, I don't know, why not? And so I ended up here. And that's pretty much the story.
Nice. And then you guys end up meeting at this arcade bar, having a few drinks, hit it off. People are like, wow, you guys sound cool when you talk. And then you decided to do a podcast. And then it sounds like you took a break. So you started in 2015. And you said you took a 2-year break. When was the 2-year break?
2016 to what, like late 2018 when I got back from Diego Garcia.
Yeah, I think it was something like that. Yeah. Yeah, if you go back into our back catalog and take a look at the episode dates, you'll see a very giant hole. So
yeah, I had to. So the thing is in 2016, I got sent off to Bahrain, which is a small island country in the Middle East. And I had to stay there for a year. And it's not like there was no internet, but because of the nature of my job, I was essentially gone out of Bahrain for 8 out of the 12 months I was there. And then I went to the tiny island of Diego Garcia, which is a territory in the absolute fucking middle of nowhere in the Indian Ocean. And they had internet there too, but the problem was for 16 gigabytes per month, you had to pay $150, and I wasn't about that action.
yeah, we had briefly considered trying to do, I mean, because we actually record our episodes remotely anyway, even though we live in the same city. It's just easier for us, and we have our
Easier
own.
for scheduling, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so we did that anyway. So we had talked briefly about, doing some remote episodes while he was overseas. And that was just like, with the internet situation down there, that was a no-go. Like, it probably would have been better to, I don't know, like airmail a USB drive with a recording on it than try to do it that way. Yeah.
And then would you guys, tell people who are listening, like what, I guess what the formula for your podcast is.
You want me to take this one?
Go for it.
Okay. So the format's actually changed a number of times over the years that we've existed. If you go back and listen to our first few episodes, it was just super free form. Like, we just kind of bullshitted about video games and had some sort of pretense of talking about, like, current game news and stuff like that. But at the time, it was just him and I sitting at a table with one, like, snowball microphone and just kind of doing our thing.
With beer.
With beer. And well, that part hasn't changed for the most part, but yeah. So the format's changed a couple times, but what we've settled on now that seems to work pretty well and people seem to like is each episode kind of focuses on one particular retro gaming topic, whether it's a game or like a company or an industry figure or a system, something like that. And we kind of talk a little bit about what we've been up to, what we've been playing, and then we have a scripted portion that talks about the brief history of the topic that we're talking about for that episode. And then the rest of the time is just kind of us talking about our experiences with that particular thing, and how we feel about it. And we usually like to wrap up talking about, whether we think it still holds up today. Like, if you were to go and play it now, whether you had nostalgia for it, or if you were just coming to it brand new, like, is this something that's worth your time? So that's kind of what we've been sticking with.
That's a good format. Who does the scripted part?
We trade off, actually.
Trade off?
Yeah, Chris and I trade off every other episode. We will write the script and then read the scripted portion.
Mm. And Shane edits all of my writing because I have terrible grammar.
I do, yes.
You sound like a good guy, Shane. What a charitable man.
I do what I can, yeah.
And then, do you also do the editing of the podcast?
I do, yeah. I am editor, producer, all that good stuff.
Do you edit, like go through and listen to the whole thing, or just because I tried that for one episode, I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. If I sound stupid, whatever, I'll sound stupid.
Yeah, so that's part of where my, I guess, perfectionism comes into play, because I'm masochistic in that way, that I go through every one of our episodes and I edit the whole thing. I take out ums and ahs, I tighten up silences, I do, like, during the scripted portions now, I like to do, like, backing audio tracks for that.
Yeah.
So
it's good.
Thank you, yeah. But man, it takes time.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it takes time. Like, we try to stick to about an hour per episode now. By the way, if you ever go back and listen to our first ones, they're just like 3-hour long ramble sessions, which is fantastic. But editing like an hour, man, takes at least 3 usually, with the way I do it. So,
have you guys listened to Business Wars by chance?
No.
No, I haven't. No.
Your scripted portion, the format reminds me of your scripted portion just turned into a whole show by itself.
Okay.
And they basically just do like these really, like simplified down of the gist of what happened on these business rivalries. But the reason I bring it up is they have a really good one with Nintendo versus Sony and Sony versus Xbox. Between the two of them, it goes all the way from like 1970 till current day, and the rivalries and the business moves. But it's like scripted, but based on their research. Like the conversations obviously aren't what they actually say, and then they do the backing tracks with the little sounds. And I think you'd like it. I think you'd get inspiration. It's really, really well put together. And I found the PS1 was already my favorite console. And when I learned more about how that came to be, it's like, now it's in the Godhead for me. I just loved the story behind the PS1. I don't want to ruin it, but it's basically like one Japanese dude's dream for 30 years to make a 3D graphics console, because he saw like some high-tech stuff in the 70s and knew that it would eventually get there. And he spent his whole life to make the PS1 happen. And it almost didn't happen because Nintendo backstabbed Sony and they were collabing and blah, blah, blah. And it's a really cool story. They do a really good job.
You have to check that out. First of all, because, it's not like there's a whole hell of a lot more we could do with the recent events that are going on right now. So we can always find a podcast. I have video chat and I'm able to see Shane's face. Like, what are you talking about?
Yes, I was looking. So I don't know how. Speaking of Florida, man, you guys, your beaches seem to be pretty popular despite recent events.
Oh my god. Yeah. Well, yeah. I have my own thoughts on that one, but it's like it's spring break, man. Right? You don't want to miss out on that.
It's true. I get it. I mean, I don't know. It's just, people were just making. It was just funny that came. Another thing that came out of Florida. It's like, oh my god, another headline out of Florida.
Yeah. And they'll just head back to where they're at, and they'll just continue to spread the positivity. I'm sure.
Right, that's what we're calling it.
What's the status in Florida right now? I'll probably put this up pretty quick. Like, how are you guys in Utah? It's like no restaurants, no bars, takeout only. Pretty much on. Is that how you guys are too?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same here.
Yeah, my kids are out of school until April 15th right now. I know that's going to get extended. I'd be surprised if the school year did not get canceled. I think it's done for the rest of the year. So, yeah, it's pretty much, I think we're all in the same situation nationwide right now. Just pretty much locked down in our homes and can't go out to restaurants. I know that kind of irritates Shane because he wanted to get out of the house because we were talking about going to beers after this. I was joking with him, leading him down that path. But yeah, that's not going to happen, unfortunately.
You can't tease me like that, man. He messaged me in Discord and he was like, yeah, we're going to grab drinks after this. And I was like, yeah, I'd be down. He's like, all the places are closed. I'm like, man, fuck you. Like, but no, I mean, so my fiance is actually a high school teacher, and they hadn't extended spring break, but obviously this doesn't apply to everybody. But for their particular like county, they're going to 100% online classes starting next week. So that's going to be an interesting change. We have to set up another office space here in the house so that she can do some virtual teaching. So
yeah, making the adjustment to work from home, I think for a lot of people is pretty weird.
It can be. It's not for me. I work in technology, like, during the day. So I already kind of work from home a couple days a week usually. So it's not a huge change for me, but I can definitely understand some other folks. This is new territory for a lot of people. I've been teaching some folks how to do teleconferencing, so that's been fun.
Yeah, working from home.
That sounds.
Oh, go ahead, Kate. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You got it. You're up, bro.
Yeah, I'm actually just working from home. Same with myself. It's the current job I'm doing. I know I'm in the military, so this is probably going to be somewhat surprising to a lot of people. Just the current nature of my job and where I'm at isn't completely foreign, because most of it's just checking emails and following up with people and just making sure the communication piece is being enabled between us and other entities. So I'm fortunate enough to be in that position right now where I can continue to work from home if they ever allow me to. I'm still not allowed to, but it's going that direction. So with everything being crazy, I'm fortunate to be in that position, and I do feel for the people who can't, like the grocers and first responders, medical facilities. Like, my heart's out to them. They are really showing that they are the true backbones of our society right now, and I have the utmost respect for them.
Yeah, I had a similar just feeling today. I went to the grocery store to pick up some food. I work from home. I do marketing. Like, it's the same thing. Nothing's really changed for me, and I'm super lucky. And I went to the grocery store. I was picking up some food, and the cash register lady was like a really older lady, probably like 70. I guess between 70 and 80. It's like, oh, she's super high risk. Like, what is she doing working here?
Right?
Well, like, what? But someone's got to. And I just told her. I said, hey, I really appreciate you working, so I can get food. I hope it works out for you. And she just looked at me and was like, thank you. And I just at that moment where I'm like, oh man, it's kind of easy when I already worked at home. So, like, I don't know, life hasn't changed much other than the internet has been crazy and people talking about Corona. But for me, there's been like no real impact other than, my kids don't go to school, so they're at home and they're kind of annoying. They're at home all day. But other than that, like, nothing's really changed, But then there was this lady who's like, she's probably stressed the whole time she's working.
Oh, I'm sure.
I don't even really think she shouldn't even be working. I should have said something more like, oh man, maybe she needs the money or something. But like, what are you doing touching all these groceries full of, like,
go home?
It's crazy. Yeah, go home.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's weird because of the fact that like I'm more used to working remotely. Like you were saying, it hasn't been a huge change. So I've been kind of insulated from a lot of what's been kind of going on out here. But just yesterday, for the first time since all this went down, I went out to the grocery store to pick up just like a couple of things. It wasn't even like food or anything, and certainly not toilet paper because that's impossible to find because people are dumb. But like,
So dumb.
I actually, okay, I needed to get some trash bags, and while I was there, I was going to grab like a thing of like cleaning solution or whatever. And man, like that kind of drove it home for me because, like I said, that was the first time I've gone out, and just the shelves are empty. It's like I had a hard time just finding trash bags, and it's just it's crazy, man.
Yeah, even at our military commissaries, where you probably expect a little bit higher standard with how people purchase and controlling their natural urges in a panic kind of condition. You go to a military commissary, our commissaries right now are completely out of toilet paper and paper towels and meat and all this kind of stuff. Like, like what certain kinds of meat are just inedible when no one's buying them, even in a crisis, when you see like ham hocks and tripe. So that's at the very bottom of people's lists. But yeah, chicken is completely wiped out. Most of the beef is completely wiped out. And it's just absolutely shocking that this is happening at all levels of society.
What I want to know is what your theory is, because everyone's making fun of the hoarding of toilet paper. Like, I don't see anyone that supports it.
No one should.
Everyone rolls their eyes and goes, "That's stupid."
It is.
Yet, who are all these people buying the toilet paper? I don't know anyone that thinks it's a good idea.
They do it in secret. That's what it is. Yeah. No, I don't know, man. No, it's just like I honestly I don't know what the rationale behind it is. Like, I've had this conversation with a couple other people over the last couple weeks, since this has been happening, and I don't know. Like, it's sort of the same thing as like you see those pictures of people buying like 18 gallons of milk. I'm like, listen, unless you've got a family of 10 at home, there's no way you are going to drink all of that before it goes bad. So it's just, I don't know if it's a lack of forethought or consideration for your fellow human beings. I don't know what it is. Like, for me, rationally, the first thing I would go to is not, I need to go grab as much toilet paper and milk as I can find. Like, what? Why would that be the first thing you go to? I don't know.
Exactly. I don't get it. And nobody gets it. So who are these people?
I think it's more of a cascading panic situation. You had an initial wave of people who are just stupid and think any panic situation, because, I think like earthquakes, hurricanes, stuff like that's going to happen where you might lose power, a prolonged experience where you're going to have to stay in your house for a prolonged period of time. You have no power, you have no water, you have no ability to go outside your house, and facilities won't be open because they may be destroyed. So you're going to have these people thinking that, oh my God, I need to go get out and get all this toilet paper. So now the toilet paper is gone because of idiots. And now who are normally rational and sane people are going to be like, oh shit, I'm almost out of toilet paper. So they're going to go, and as soon as they see some toilet paper, they're going to buy it. Because they feel that if they don't buy that toilet paper now, they may not have their toilet paper later. So whenever they see the toilet paper, they're going to be like, well, this is going to be fucking mine because I need to get this now. And I think everything's just cascading, and it's building on each other, and it's nuts. it's
okay, but
it's
like, here's the
crazy
thing, though, right? I guess you can make the argument for toilet paper because, like, that's not perishable, but there is even less of an excuse for people who live in Florida or anywhere in this area, by the way, to be buying like, perishable items in bulk, because we are all used to prepping for hurricanes, and not to stock up on things that you need to keep in a fridge. There's no excuse.
You assume that we're used to stocking for hurricanes. You're giving the people of Florida a lot of credit.
That's probably true.
I think I think that idea of the cascade makes a lot of sense because it only needs a small, really, really dumb portion of the people to start the chain.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then and then other people, they don't really think they need toilet paper to stock up, but they are afraid if I don't get some now, I won't get any ever when I do need it.
Exactly.
So I have to buy it as well, and then that just stacks. That makes a lot of sense because that would make sense because almost nobody thinks it's a good idea. Yet all the toilet paper ran out. So how did that happen? I think that makes total sense.
It might be a conspiracy from the toilet paper industry. They are.
Oh, we could go deep down the rabbit hole of all the fun, exciting conspiracy theories. Look, this is what I think about conspiracy theories. If I was a screenwriter for Hollywood, I would be paying attention to all this shit, and that would be my movie in 10 years when everyone's forgot. I would just steal the conspiracy theories. They'd make great movies.
It would be called Charmin.
Charmin, the Corona conspiracy.
My favorite is the the people who buy into like Trump is. I call it the Trump is Skywalker theory. I don't know what the real name is.
Oh, I need to hear this.
Go on.
It's generally people who are. It's like Trump is Skywalker because this whole thing is Trump playing 4D chess against the deep state and the Illuminati, who are the child pedophile, interdimensional vampire, Alex Jones type shit.
Oh my god!
But Trump is like, it's the. Have you guys heard QAnon? People making fun of QAnon,
and they should.
Yeah, it's like QAnon's ever morphing thing. Anyway, right now, what it is, it's Ellen got blasted because everyone thought Ellen was in prison, and she had to talk about it on social media. Enough people believe this. It's that the coronavirus is just made up. Or it's staged. It's not really that bad because this is all a front where Trump and the FBI and international agencies are making mass arrests across famous people, political leaders, people in power, Saudi oil. And they're saying like all these celebrities are going to, because when Tom Hanks got it, they're like, Tom Hanks is the first one. A bunch of other celebrities are going to quote, get the coronavirus and disappear. It's because they're being round up by Trump. And they're all part of this giant sex trafficking ring, which goes back to like Pizzagate. It's this whole thing. I think the real conspiracy is QAnon is like a group of trolls that just keep feeding this thing and making a bunch of fucking money. That's what's going on.
Hey, don't fuck with the God Emperor.
Yeah. Anyway,
it's only a matter of time before the lizard people rose up to power.
It just blows me away that like even my wife, who has like a very sort of tame social network, she has friends who are posting these conspiracy theories. And I think it goes back to what you're saying about the cascading effects of fear and panic. I think people who normally wouldn't even bother listening to that are now open to like crazy ideas because of, I don't know, just people are on edge. They're scared. They want to feel like something's going on. Oh, this is all not a big deal. Actually, Trump is catching all the child sex traffickers. That feels better than being scared. Maybe that's what's going on. I
guess that's true.
Some crazy shit, man.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's some legitimacy to the whole like cascading theory that Chris was talking about because even me, like I caught myself the other day looking at my cupboard and being like, yo, do I have enough toilet paper? Like, maybe I should get some more toilet paper. So, I mean, yeah, it happens. Like, I mean, I'm fine for right now, thank you. But you know,
well, let's chat. I want to know about. So, generally, what I do is I talk to people just about the games they played growing up and which ones impacted them. And looks like we lost. He'll come back.
Yeah, it's fine.
He'll come back. He'll live.
He'll be fine.
Come back. What? So you grew up? You said in Maine, right?
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, what year were you born?
1986.
86. Mm-hmm. So my guess is your first console was an NES.
That is actually not true.
Damn.
But close.
What is it?
So we had talked about this on one of our episodes before too. Weirdly enough, my first console was a Sega Master System.
Oh, so you had the Master System came before the Genesis, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Nice. So that came out. Did that come out? Master System come out before NES? As well? I think it did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
That was the first one that I had. But then of course I never actually got a Genesis. I went from that to an NES. So you were pretty close. But what on Master System do you remember playing? I had a very limited selection of games, actually. But I do recall, and Chris might be able to help me out with this one because I could never remember the name, but he totally got it for me.
Okay.
There was Gangster's Alley? Is that what it's called?
Is that a Lycon game?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gangster Town.
Gangster Town. There we go. Yeah. So I obviously I had a light gun accessory with it, and Gangster Town was one of the ones that I played a lot. I also.
Oh, this looks dope.
Oh, you looking that up right now? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. This is, yeah, it's like wow. I've never heard of it. I love when people bring up games. Oh, it even has like that Outrun. You know, the racing games like Outrun where it's flat and they just bring things towards you.
Mm-hmm.
Has a section of like a car. You'd shoot in the car.
Yes.
Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. Most of my memories are from that one, and I think I also had the Rocky like licensed boxing game for the Master System, which was hard as shit, by the way. Like I don't think I ever got past like the second guy, and yeah, it's objectively bad.
I'm checking. I didn't. This is also interesting because this is like pre-Punch Out.
Yeah. It is not good. But you know, given that I think I owned maybe 3 or 4 cartridges for that system at the time, it's pretty much all I had to go on.
So. The light gun games for the Master System were absolutely fantastic. Everything other than the light gun games, it's mostly like a B-.
Really, I don't know a ton about I had one neighbor kid that had a Master System, and it was a game. Maybe you'll remember it because it sounds like you know a lot. It's like a robot on tracks. It's like a Wall-E type robot, and you run around and jump. It's like a platformer. I remember that being on a Master System, and that's all I knew about the Master System. So, and what year I asked him while you were cut off. What year were you born?
1985.
Oh. Okay, so you're same, yeah. So I guess that his first system was NES because of he was 86, right, or 84?
86, yeah,
86, and you were 85. Mm-hmm. But you were in Maine. Where were you again growing up?
Outside Chicago.
Chicago, that's what it was. What was your first system?
The NES.
NES, yeah. Okay.
I got it in what I recall as Christmas of 1989. I'm just going to stick with that because I saw the release of some of these games and it doesn't quite fit, but it does because no one's stuck to release date. So it's, who knows? So Christmas of 1989, got my NES, and the only reason I remember that is I specifically remember getting Double Dragon 2 as a game to go with it, and I thought it was a cassette tape, because of course when you're 4 years old, all you think about is, movies, and it looked like a cartoon. I thought I'd be interested in it. My dad said, no, that's a video game. So, and that's kind of where I'm thinking it's 89, because we moved into a different house in 1990, and we had that Christmas in my old house. I know I'm kind of going into the weeds with this shit, but so that was my first.
Tell us more, Grandpa.
Yeah, but that was really my first experience was the NES and having Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt, because it was the deluxe set, because of course it was.
Yep.
And Double Dragon 2. So those were really the 3 games that I really started out with, and had a blast with it. More specifically, I remember playing, Mario and Double Dragon more than Duck Hunt, but I think that really goes for everyone who had Mario Duck Hunt. You kind of play Duck Hunt for a couple minutes, and then, this is fun, the fuck you dog, and I'm going to go play Mario.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And once I had the same deluxe, the double whammy on NES, it's like once I figured I could just touch the light gun on the screen and just click it. It was super. I'm like, this game's boring. But yeah, I played way more Mario. Shane, so you had a Master System. You had a few games. Then you got the NES. What were the games that stood out to you when you first got it?
Well, I mean, with the exception of the Mario Duck Hunt combo, of course. I probably Metroid. And so actually I still have it. I was digging through some of my stuff lately because, with the self-imposed quarantine and everything, I've had some time to do some cleaning, and I came across the official Nintendo Player's Guide that has info on something like 90 NES games, and I had that back then. And that was super helpful, by the way, playing Metroid, because if you didn't have some sort of way of mapping where you were going, it's you can get lost pretty easily. So so there's that,
especially when you're 9, 5, 6, something like that, whatever you were.
Yeah, I do not recall getting very far in that game when I was a kid, for the record. But the other one was Life Force, because just how striking the art in it was. It was just so so Giger-esque and weird that I think that's like burned into my memory now. Also a really hard shoot 'em up.
Oh, yeah, it's like a Gradius, like side-scroller bullet hell
Yep.
shooter. Yeah, it reminds me, there's an NES game where it was it was similar art styles, like sci-fi and aliens, but it was a top-down shooter, a bullet hell, and then you could get out of the ship in certain segments and like play a I don't know, like an astronaut or something. I can never remember. I've brought it up in a couple of podcasts, and no one can ever remember it. And I don't know like what to search for.
Yeah, I vaguely remember what you're talking about, but now I can't remember what it was called.
Can you describe it again? I'm sorry, like my dog's like scratching at the door and everything like that.
Yeah, it's fine. It's like the cover art had like a crazy alien with tentacles, like a face with tentacles, almost like a System Shock 2, whatever that the main antagonist is. I forget
Showdown.
the AI's name. Yeah, kind of like that, but it was more. And then the gameplay was a top-down bullet hell, like Raiden or 1942. And then, but there's certain points you could get out of your ship, and then it was a side-scroller.
Oh, the Guardian Legend.
Is that what it is? Let me check it out. I hope you're right.
The mystery may have been solved.
It's a Broderbund game.
Sorry, YouTube's making me watch an ad. Damn you, YouTube. This is a channel called SNES Drunk. I love the name of that channel.
Again.
Yeah, this is it. 100%.
Bam.
You nailed it. Plus 10 internets for you.
Sweet.
Hell yeah. This is it. I brought this up on multiple podcasts and no one knows it. Yeah, there's the artwork with the Shogun System Shock 2 look. This game was awesome. I liked sci-fi as a kid, and so this was one of my NES favorites. What are other NES games you guys remember?
Chris, I'll let you take a few if you want. Unless he died. Did you die?
He might have died again. Got some internet problems.
This always happens.
I'll forgive him though because he remembered Guardian Legend.
That's true. He gets a free pass, I guess. So let's see. Life Force was definitely a big one. For the listeners out there, by the way, if you never played Life Force, go at least take a look at the like the artwork for some of the bosses in particular. It is some like gnarly shit. Which is super cool. It's very like body horror too. It's kind of like John Carpenter's The Thing, which is crazy.
Yeah. I'm watching some footage now. It's very like gore almost.
Yeah. It's like and it's. I mean, I don't know. Maybe this speaks to my personality on some level too. But like, I was super into that one, and then I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it was related. One of my favorite Super Nintendo games of all time is Contra 3: The Alien Wars, and the artwork in that game is also very similar to that as well. Welcome back,
I think
Chris.
I remember Alien Wars. Oh yeah, I'm looking at a couple of the bosses. I can see what you mean.
So my internet shit itself again. I haven't had these problems in like a year, to be honest.
Yeah, that's typical.
Yeah. Was I right? Was it the Guardian Legend?
It was. You were right,
Okay.
and we give you a free pass because I was super stoked you remembered it. That's a game I have tried to remember a bunch of times and could never. Because I would Google stuff like NES shooter plus side scroll. I could never find it. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great game. I love that game.
What are some other NES games you remember playing?
Yeah, Chris, now that you're back, why don't you talk a little bit about yours?
Oh, God. I think the thing that sticks most out to me... So first of all, I'm going to do a funny one, because I was trying to think about this, coming into this episode, knowing how you kind of do your formats. And it's like, what games do I remember from the NES? Because most of it blends in with mostly Sega and SNES, just when I got my NES, which was in 89, which is only 2 years before. And it's like, I think it was the Sesame Street ABC 1-2-3 game. And
Oh, is that the one where you have there's a pipe mini game where you have to move the pipes to connect water?
Yes, and you have to make sure it gets to the end. And you can do it like simply and straight and just get from A to B, or you can just make this crazy concoction of just making just absolute bullshit in order to finish the level. And I think that was my favorite game, was the pipe game. I don't even remember the other ones. I just remember the fucking pipe game. I think that was Ernie in a bath or something like that.
Yes, it was. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking. Wow, I would have never remembered that. But it's weird how memory works. Mm-hmm. As soon as you said that, like a little piece of RAM in my brain opened up, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that memory was there. I totally remember that game.
I don't know why we had it. I have no idea why we had it, because I think it was well beyond Sesame Street at the time. The other games I got was the Donkey Kong Classics cart, which had Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. And back then I played a lot more of Donkey Kong Jr. And then, of course, there was the original Final Fantasy, which once I got, I think I never played anything but RPGs after that, with the occasional platformer.
So now we're getting into why I stalked you guys and wanted to bring you on, because I am a JRPG. Like, it's bad. Like, I had to. I went deep into the JRPG world, and I had to sort of like tone it back to be a functional human being.
That sounds
I love
right.
the JRPGs. What I'm surprised with is, you could only have been like maybe 7 or 8. I definitely didn't get Final Fantasy. I played Final Fantasy on the NES retroactively,
Mm-hmm.
but at that age, I don't think it would have caught me. But it sounds like it sucked you in even at that age.
Oh, absolutely. So I got into Final Fantasy a little bit after the Super Nintendo was released. I was about 7 or 8 years old. And the reason I got...
Okay.
And the reason...
Still, that's pretty young for that game.
Yeah, I'm even amazed looking back at it. Like, I don't see 7 or 8 year olds getting into that stuff, and you certainly look back then, of course, that really wasn't the case. But the thing that really enticed me is every day after school, we had a house sitter. Well, kind of like just after school daycare. And, you know, a lot of cool video games are over there. I was introduced to TurboGrafx 16 and Final Fantasy, because they had Final Fantasy. And every single day we go over there, and I would have just...
Oh, shit. It was just getting good.
See, this is what happens. So Chris has been a weeb for a long time, is what he's trying to get at. Also, in one of our previous episodes, I totally gave him a bunch of shit for like his bourgeoisie like daycare center, because I was just like, y'all had a Nintendo? Like, we just watched Barney like VHS tapes. Like, what the hell?
That's a fair point. My daycare's never had Nintendo.
Right?
That's damn straight.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Look, every time he cuts off, let's just shit on him while he's gone.
I mean, that's what I usually do. So,
back.
you know, and he's told me he doesn't go back and listen to our episodes after, so I can do whatever I want. It's great.
I don't listen to him either. Yeah. So it sounds like I'm getting the gist that, like, is he the one that you said does the content, the collector content on the Instagram?
Yeah. The vast majority of that stuff is from his collection. He's the big collector of the two of us. I obviously I love my retro games and everything. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing the podcast. But I just I'm just not into having a lot of physical stuff to move around.
Me too.
Yeah,
me too. I could definitely tell. I knew one of you was like a super collector nerd and JRPG nerd based on the content. That's obviously him, and he's got a great memory too. Like coming up with Guardian Legends. Hey, he's back.
Jesus Christ, I don't know what's going on. Like, I got into
it's the
a full
lizard
description.
people. They don't want you to talk about Final Fantasy.
They don't want me to talk about Final Fantasy. Fuck Final Fantasy.
I was just saying, I could tell that one of you was a deep JRPG nerd, and now I know. Now the mystery has been lifted. It's you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
it's crazy that you got into it that young.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you were at. Then you started going off, and I don't really know where you cut off, but it was right after me bringing up. I'm surprised you got into it at such a young age.
Yeah. I have the whole entire description. It's going to be on the file I'm going to send you. There's that. Because I didn't even know I was off the internet. I went off this rant for 30 seconds. I'm like, fuck me, man. The fucking internet.
I'll be able to. I'll just splice it in. I'll make it work. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it.
Bottom line up front, or too long, don't read. After school care. Enjoyed making parties, never made it further than half the game, but just completely liked rebooting it and just rebuilding a party over and over and over again.
Yeah, that makes a little bit more sense. I do remember tinkering with it, like, what happens if I do all black mages or all fighters? And like, it never worked, but I remember tinkering with that. It wasn't until I hate to say this because for claiming a JRPG nerd background, it's a little cliche that the first JRPG that got me is Final Fantasy VII.
I knew it.
That's the truth.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I hated people like you.
Hey, to be
bunch
fair,
of fucking posers.
I didn't have a Super Nintendo,
right?
So I didn't get and I had Genesis, but Phantasy Star was like, just, I don't know,
it wasn't a big enticer. It wasn't, and even the Super Nintendo, and this kind of goes into why I hated people who loved Final Fantasy. And if you're listening to this, we'll have a Final Fantasy VII episode coming up soon, so you better listen to that too.
Ooh,
we do.
That'll be good.
I'm probably going to repeat a lot of this. is I was into like the Final Fantasy or JRPG scene before Final Fantasy 7 came out. So like big into Final Fantasy 6, big into Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 2, of course 4. You know, I was getting into like the Lufias and the JRPG experience. I was really getting into these things. And then Final Fantasy 7 came out and everyone was like, "Isn't this the greatest game ever?" I was like, "Well, I mean, I think Chrono Trigger might be a better game." And they're like, no, you're an idiot.
I agree.
You're a fucking idiot. Look at how beautiful this game is. Look how great the cinematics are.
Chris.
Yeah,
but look
Cloud.
at the Buster Sword. Look how big his sword is, Chris.
And look at that spiky hair.
Yeah. Sephiroth is best husbando, okay?
And I'd be like, well, how do you think it compares to Final Fantasy 3? And they'd be like, what's that for? I never heard of it. And then I just, like,
I get it.
I'd want to just... This is why I have resentment towards Final Fantasy VII. It's not that I think it's a bad game. It's just the atmosphere that came with it when it launched. Yes, we were getting a lot more fans in the JRPG genre, which enabled us to get a lot more games from Japan, which we weren't getting before. But
correct,
it just felt like no one gave a shit about the games that enabled it to get there and build it. And when you try bringing these games at the time, now, you know, hindsight being 2020, people getting back into more retro games. But at the time, there was almost a disdain for anyone who liked anything other than Final Fantasy VII.
I don't remember. I mean, it definitely got me into it. I bought a Super Nintendo after to get all the, like, I'm like, oh, these are dope. Apparently Super Nintendo has all the goods. I had a friend that had a Super Nintendo, so I retroactively, like, right after I went through everything, and Chrono Trigger is definitely, I think, a better game. And I also developed that same resentment later because the PS1 also, which was like my main console, was a great JRPG console, and I would have that same thing, like, yeah, Final Fantasy VII is cool, but there's a lot of other really cool games, too, that I think are better. So you are definitely more OG than me, but for the record, I did go back and buy SNES and played all of those games. And I bought Beyond the Beyond, which was the first JRPG on PS1 launch day. I was waiting for that, like, because I knew a JRPG was going to come to the PS1 eventually. And that's what really... Actually, so my time's all fucked up. There's no way, because Final Fantasy VII came out after that. So that couldn't have been my first exposure to a JRPG, because I did get Beyond the Beyond launch, and that came out before Final Fantasy VII. So my memory's off.
Well, clearly it's the only one that mattered. That's what it is, obviously. I mean, it's, you know, Chris just needs to admit that he's a weeb hipster, and that's okay, you know? He's just like, I liked JRPGs before they were cool. I get it.
Well, oh shit, he's so angry that he left.
Yeah, he rage quit the episode. That's it probably won't be the last time. But so I feel like I need to put my input on this too. So I came to the whole JRPG thing like way later. My experience was actually more with Western RPGs. I'm super into RPGs as well, and I have been for quite a long time, but I didn't come at it from that vector. Like during that time with like the NES, things like that we were talking about, my stuff was way more into just like adventure games or like platformers. Like, I don't know if y'all remember like Little Nemo Dream Master, like that was one.
Yes,
I played quite a bit.
Little Nemo was the shit.
Yeah, man. And I never actually owned it, for the record. A buddy of mine had it for his NES, and I just made excuses to go over to his house a lot. But but so there's like that one, and you know, I tried playing things like Ninja Gaiden, and I was terrible at it because it's hard as hell. And Ghosts and Goblins, like that kind of stuff. So I was way more into platformers at that time. But jumping like ahead a little bit into the history of the gaming, like I said, like Western RPGs were my jam for quite a while, and I guess kind of still are to a certain degree. Between Chris and I was much more of the PC gamer. So like in the mid 90s or so, that's when we got our first like home PC, and I fell into a lot of that pretty hard. So, Chris, are you back?
I'm glad. Yeah, he's back. I'm glad you brought that up, Shane, because one of the things, like the theories or things I've talked about with guests in the past, is your taste in gaming, especially if you're born in '85. That age between, I don't know, like 10 to 18.
Yeah.
If you had a PC versus you had a console. And there's like very like kind of clear correlations. Like, and that makes total sense that you came into RPGs through Western RPGs because you started on PC and came all the way around after doing, like, it sounds like you probably did like Oblivion and Skyrim and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, and even before that, I mean, my first introduction into that kind of realm of PC gaming was a lot of Blizzard games, actually. So I like Diablo. I sunk. So I probably shouldn't speak in the past tense because I still have the original Diablo on my machine right now. That I have a character for. But yeah, I sunk so many hours into Diablo, and then of course D2 and like Lord of Destruction. Like, actually, I like telling this story because Diablo 2 was the reason that my parents actually ended up putting like a time limit on my like PC time at home, because I would come home from school. Yeah, Battle.net, man. I would drop my backpack at the computer, fire up Battle.net, play D2 until dinner, go to dinner, eat, and then come back, play more D2 until I had to go to bed. And somewhere in there, probably did homework. But that lasted for a little while, and then my parents were just like, okay, no, this is insane, and we need to stop this. So, yeah, but so there was a lot of Diablo, but also a lot of, like, you know, the older CRPGs, like, Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights and like Icewind Dale, stuff like that. I was really into
Icewind Dale was one I would see. I had a homie that had a PC. His dad was a programmer, and he always had dope PCs. And I remember Icewind Dale, like the art style, like that kind of Donkey Kong-esque, like they pre-render stuff on a computer, and then they turn it into sprites, and then they feed the sprites to the engine. The backgrounds are all pre-rendered. That was my first introduction to pre-rendered stuff, was Icewind Dale, and I remember thinking, how is this even possible? How can this look so cool?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Good shit.
Yeah, even I was into that kind of RPG, even being a console RPG shit. Like the PC RPG, starting with Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, Neverwinter Nights, they were all really fucking cool.
So you had the console and the PC growing up?
Well, just like you said, my dad was big into... He was a programmer, too. I won't say big into. He is a programmer. So, you know, we'd always get the dope PCs in our room, too. I remember having an Apple PC. I don't remember what it was. But, you know, my sister got an Apple II LC, and then I ended up getting an Apple computer that also had Windows installed on it. Like, when it was Windows, 3.1? 3.2? I can't fucking remember. 3.1. And
yeah,
it never worked right, because I remember trying to install a freeware version of Descent on it and just said, fuck you. But, like, I remember playing Myst, and when it first came out.
Another great pre-rendered type game that was beautiful. Still is beautiful.
But I didn't get it, and I hated it, because I was, 7 years old? I'm like, what the fuck is this? I mean, it's cool.
Puzzles?
Yeah. But eventually, I would continue to get PCs, because that was my dad's, that was his passion. So I began to run gateways, and end up getting, you know, the Baldur's Gates and the Neverwinter Nights of the world, and especially, like Shane said, the Blizzard games, particularly Warcraft 2. That was my poison for a very, very long time, and I loved it. And so just because I played on console, I still prefer console to this day, and I'll always prefer console. But those PC games, man, they were rocking. They were definitely rocking.
They were. That's a good era for PC games. I also would that's what got me into RTS. My friend's computer. He had Command and Conquer. First time I saw Command and Conquer. I had played Warcraft 1 and Warcraft 2. Heroes of Might and Magic is kind of not RTS, a little bit different.
Yeah, I love that game. It's turn-based.
That game's turn-based. Like, I loved how you could like stack the characters, and then the number below was how many of those troops you had, and the bigger, and that was like building your fortress. That was cool. But when I saw Command and Conquer, and it seemed like at the time there was no limit to how many units you could select. Whereas in like Warcraft and Warcraft 2, you'd have these limits. In Command and Conquer, there's like hundreds of soldiers and fire. And like the PCs, I was jealous of my friend. That his dad was a programmer, because the PC games were definitely cooler, but I'd only get to play them, you know, once a week, maybe, if I was lucky.
Hell yeah, man. Command & Conquer was actually the first RTS I ever played. And those full motion video clips are probably, looking back on them now, are cheesy as hell, but I always remember Kane as being just like this badass, like bald guy. But
the cheese is what makes it worth it, man. It's like you can't have a club sandwich without the cheese.
Well, it's like Wing Commander too, like the FMV in that game also.
The Wing Commander, yeah, very similar.
Yeah, but that
full motion video.
That had Mark Hamill.
That did.
Did it?
Yeah, man. Yeah, Mark Hamill is a national treasure.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, actually, we're going to be talking about Command and Conquer in one of our upcoming episodes because the remaster collection is going to be coming out.
It's coming. Yeah. I'm excited for that.
Did you get your limited copy, Shane?
That dude, no, that's your realm, man.
Yeah, it sounds like it's your realm.
Yeah.
It is.
Hey, I wanted to come back to you, Chris, on some JR. So you're playing these PC games, you're playing the JRPGs. I know you said you had some resentment.
Yeah.
I was trying to defend myself. I don't know where we got cut off, but I was trying to defend myself so you wouldn't think I'm a total loser.
I don't.
I did. And I realized my memory's wrong because I thought Final Fantasy VII was what got me into JRPGs. I remember it being a big deal. But then as we were talking, I remembered I got Beyond the Beyond like the day it came out, and I was waiting for it. And that came out before Final Fantasy VII. I think it was but Final Fantasy VII was definitely the very strong memory. We came back from boating. I had a friend that had a boat. And my pre-order was at GameStop, and my mom wouldn't take me to go pick GameStop up. And I agreed. I legitimately got in tears, begged her to take me to GameStop.
For Beyond the Beyond?
Anyway, no, for Final Fantasy VII.
Oh.
So I was into JRPGs, but I think Final Fantasy VII is just the one that came up initially because that was a big deal for me.
Right.
But I did play a few before Final Fantasy VII.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I went retroactively back. I bought a SNES. I played Chrono Trigger. I played all the other Final Fantasies, Legend of Mana, Secret of Mana. I played everything I could on Super Nintendo once I got into it. But I did come to it later. So you're the true OG. I want to ask the true OG, just so I can maybe judge you.
Okay, go for it.
What is your favorite JRPG and what is your favorite Final Fantasy game?
Ooh, favorite JRPG has got to be Chrono Trigger. That is definitely
That's pretty good.
My favorite JRPG.
That's my number 2.
Just because it's the ultimate fan project. It's fucking Toriyama and the Final Fantasy team and the Enix team. You can't get much better than that. And just the nostalgia, I think. Have the better games come out since then? Yeah, sure. But maybe. I'll say maybe.
Maybe. The soundtrack is bar none one of the best soundtracks.
Second best on the SNES. Second best on the SNES.
Who do you think's first best on the SNES?
For soundtrack?
For soundtrack, yeah.
Oh, Final Fantasy VI by far.
You like 6 more?
The soundtrack? Yeah. Oh, by a lot. It's not even close.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
No hesitation.
I mean, 6 is good.
Zero hesitation.
But I put out a remix album of Chrono Triggers. That's my favorite soundtrack, maybe of all time. But
it's not bad. It's not bad.
Oh, this is personal now. Okay.
That's great. My favorite Final Fantasy is 4.
Is which one? I couldn't hear you.
4.
4. Why?
Why? Oh, it's so that one's interesting. Am I still here? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, you're still here.
Okay, good. I have to make sure right now. So,
yeah.
So Final Fantasy IV, for a long time, I sat on it and I said 6. 6 is the best. 6 is my favorite. 6 is the best one ever. There's a long time I said 6 was the best game of all time. I've greatly come back on that. But since I've gone back and I've played Final Fantasy IV, and I think it's because I like the simplicity of it. It's not too complex. It's linear without being overly linear in the sense that 10 and 13 are. And it's not overly complicated like you see in everything after Final Fantasy VI, really, when you think about it. It's a nice, simple plot line. So I'm not sitting here and I'm not saying, hey, look, is it the most complicated or most well-designed or best Final Fantasy, technically speaking, ever created? I would say no. But it just hits all the right notes with me. It makes me extremely happy to play. It gives me that warm, fuzzy feeling of just makes me feel good. And there is conflict. Like when you say, oh, Aerith died, and that's so sad. Going back to Final Fantasy VII, me hating them, the people that loved it. Like, oh, no one's ever died in a game like this before. I'm like, okay, granted, they didn't die, but obviously you weren't there for Palom and Porum turning themselves into stone. You weren't there when Tella died. You weren't there for a lot of those things
Spoilers.
that happened before.
Excuse me.
Okay, fuck them. Go live. But like they're all still there, and I like, especially the Palom and Porum thing. Now that you have kids and I have kids, like that scene hits me harder and harder every single time I watch it in Final Fantasy IV, and I just realized how early it was and how good of a game it was at the time. And
for the time,
it's still good. But I would say probably the best Final Fantasy. My second favorite Final Fantasy is 10.
No. So one of my really good friends, he does like, his job is he does like fan art for games and shit, and makes a bunch of money. He was on an episode, and loves Final Fantasy X. It's his favorite.
Yeah.
And it's one of my least favorite. And we argue about 10 endlessly. And so at first, when you didn't say 10, I was like, whew, but then you said it as your second favorite.
Yeah.
And now I have to just throw into question every word that's come out of your mouth. Because 10 is a hot... Okay, now I'll say this. The soundtrack to 10, I think 2 Xanarkin is one of the best single Final Fantasy songs. I learned to play it on the piano. I love that song.
Uh-huh.
But overall, I just felt like I bought 10. I was super excited for it. I remember getting it day of Toys R Us, and I beat it. I played it. I obviously beat it. But when it ended, I just felt like it was a hot, steaming pile of garbage. I loved the lore and the idea.
Have you played Final Fantasy 12?
12? I love 12.
Ugh. Okay.
I love any Ivalice. So my favorite Final Fantasy is Tactics.
Yes,
I like Ivalice.
I can agree. Yeah,
I am
I
vindicated.
love it. Such a good game.
No, Chris, fuck you, because I brought this up earlier. We were talking about what our favorite like Final Fantasy games were in another episode, and I was like, you know what? Like, I agreed that I think 4 and probably maybe 9 is a close second for me now. But like,
Nine's good.
FF Tactics was from all of the Final Fantasy like pantheon. In my opinion, Tactics I think is the best.
It's the best. Yeah, you just can't get better.
And Chris disagreed with me. Now he's trying to pretend like that didn't happen.
I don't think it's. I still prefer 4. I still prefer 4 and 10. But Tactics is amazing. I'm not going to sit here and say Tactics is not amazing. It's a great.
Now
game.
here's the catch with this one though. And this is where my opinion might actually be the unpopular one. So, I will also make the argument that I personally prefer Final Fantasy Tactics Advance over the original.
Oh
no!
Yeah, see,
yeah, I'm not with you on that one. I mean, as far as preference, it's a good game. It just and I beat it, but I don't know. Maybe it's because I had already my mind was already blown by Tactics in the first place, and so part of the reason why Tactics was like so I don't know such a big deal to me is it was like totally different, and like the vibe in the world and the lore and mixing in religion and like the mystical with the religion and the politics heavy, aside from just like from like tweeny 14-year-old boy emo kid saves the world. Like that was already so fresh to me that by the time Advance came out, I wasn't as like surprised. It was just more of the same.
Yeah,
but maybe I think you could make the argument it's a more refined and polished game.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I also think that just from
terrible
my own
translation.
Well, yeah, but from the reason I prefer it is because I came at it from the other direction where FFTA, I guess you want to call it, was my first one, and then I went back and played the original Tactics after. So I sunk like
that makes sense.
Bananas amount of time into the advanced version. So that's why I think that's my personal preference.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't like 10. I mean, I beat it. I beat all of them. So I like all of them enough to play them.
Even 8?
Actually, I didn't. I beat 8, dude. I think 10 is garbage. I think 8 is amazing.
Wow.
I think 12 is amazing. And 13 and 13-2, nah, not really into them. 15, really torn. I was really, really torn with 15 because I just followed that game from versus 13 until it became 15 and all the changes and reading forums on NeoGAF, and it was like glad to see it. happened, and parts of it I loved, and parts of it I was like, I'm 50-50 on 15.
The second half of that game is awful.
Yes, once you get to the train, chapter 13, whatever, which is a similar thing. Xenogears is one of my favorite JRPGs, but Disc 4 has a similar issue. They ran out of time and money.
Disc 2.
And Disc 4... Is it Disc 2?
Yeah, there's only 2 discs.
There's only 2 discs? I'm going to default to you. You have a really good memory. So, yeah, Disc 2. But I just remember, like, once you get to the end of the game, it's just like cutscene, battle. It kind of just... Other than that, Xenogears might be one of my favorite, like, higher on my list. But because of Disc 2.
See, the issues with, like, FF15 are why I will say that I always tell people if they ask about that I would just recommend playing the Pocket edition of that game because it's actually surprisingly good, and it kind of distills the game down to just like the essential parts of the story and cuts out a lot of garbage.
And most of the story of that game is garbage.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I liked when I beat it. I feel like it's garbage. But when I read the lore behind Arden, and then when episode Arden came out, and I just read about it, I really liked a lot of the ideas in the lore. But it just was so terribly executed that it came out as a jumbled. I did get a little emotional at the end when Noctis comes back to life, like whatever 10, 13 years later, he's got a scrubby beard, and you're going into whatever the city is, Luminous, and you know that Noctis is going to die, and they all know that he's going to die, and they're having their last campfire moment before they go. I'm like, okay, that did strike a chord with me, but that's probably the only part in the entire 80-hour experience that I felt anything.
I was so turned off by that point, I didn't even care. I think
he didn't care.
Like he woke up and it was like 13 years later, and everyone was just like, "Oh, you're back." So, hey, welcome back, man. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I was so pissed off by the reaction after all that time. I'm like, that's not how things would happen. That is not at all. How things would.
It's a fair point.
It's like, this is stupid. This is just really. I know like they changed part of the game, and I figured out what it was later as I looked it up. But going into it, I knew they changed something. I didn't know what it was, so I thought, oh, did they change this entire last chapter of the game just to make sense or something? I don't know. And found out, no, it wasn't. It was always this bad. And I was very, very irritated. I'm like, the end. Shane knows. He got my rapid-fire review, and he yelled at me for going off too long about how awful it was and how pissed off I was.
I think it's an awful Final Fantasy. Overall, it's an awful Final Fantasy. I had some good moments, but it's pretty terrible. I agree with you there. I am surprised that you think 8 and 12 are terrible.
I don't. 12's an acquired taste. I didn't like it. And I know why I didn't like it, because I didn't know the mechanics.
Was it the battle
of the game.
system?
No, I didn't mind the battle system because you can curtail it to whatever you want it to be. I just didn't know how to play it correctly, because I guess you got to get items in your inventory in order to get items to get the better weapons in your inventory.
Yes.
And if you don't know that, you're going to be short on gold the entire game. You're going to be you're not going to be able to do as much damage or fight as efficiently as you should the entire game. And then there are missions you're supposed to do that are just completely random, and you don't get the RNG to produce it, and it can take you a long time to do the hunts. And that really irritated me. So I put a lot of time into it. It's not awful. I recognize it's an acquired taste. It's just not my taste. Now, FF8, that's terrible. In fact, I put FF8 below. I put FF8 below FF2, not by a large margin, but I'd rather play Final Fantasy 2 than Final Fantasy 8.
Wow. Okay. Well, first off, you're right about 12. My memory's a little rosy because I recently played the Zodiac Age remaster.
I'm sure it's a lot
which
better.
Fixes all of fixes all that. Like you can just unlock everything, so you don't have to do that, because the whole item to get items things is like an unnecessary extra step and a waste of time. Mm-hmm. You can get rid of all of that and gold and unlock everything, so it's like just more traditional level up, get your skills, and fast travel. Like there's a bunch of stuff fixed with that. So I think you're right. The last time I played it was the Zodiac Age, so I had forgotten some of those pain points you mentioned. 8 just being garbage. That's typical for a snob. I'm just messing with you. Everyone hates me for liking 8. Everybody hates me. I'm used to it.
I don't hate
really
you for liking it. I just think you have bad taste, but that's okay.
Yes, exactly. It's fine. I'm used to it. I think 8 is it's like most. I will admit most people think 8 is terrible, and there's something to when you're making something that's a commercial product too. By the way, the point is to be mass appeal enough to sell lots of copies. So part of the art is to appeal to as many people as possible, and so 8 is not successful in that regard. And I don't place it high, but just like you were mentioning other games, personally, I liked it more than 7 when I played it. After I played 7. When I was younger, some of the reasons were kind of lame. I hated the chibi characters in 7, and I liked that the characters were more realistically proportioned in 8, and you could actually see them. They didn't like disappear into you and appear out. They'd actually follow you around. I thought the idea of like gardens and seed was cool. I did have a problem with it the first time I played. I didn't understand the junctioning system, the GF system.
That's the best, and that is the best part of the game.
That is the best part. But I had a similar experience where I got really far into the game and I wasn't attaching magic right, and so I would level up, but I couldn't do anything, and I gave up. And then I came back and played it again when I was like much later, like 16 or 17 years old, and played through the whole thing and loved it. So as first time around, I didn't actually like it. I failed. I quit. But then the second time around, I liked it so much that I just ended up liking it. But I get it, and I understand why people don't like it. Squall is there's a lot. It's a terrible game that for whatever reason I liked.
I feel like Squall is just like they looked at FF7 and they were just like, how can we make more of an edgelord character? Let's see. Give him a gun sword and a leather jacket. Okay, we're getting somewhere now.
And one of the reasons I hated 10, by the way, was I hated Lulu's or the Black Mage outfit with the belts. Too many belts. And Squall's got a belt problem too.
The Hot Topic problem,
so,
yes.
You're not
a
about
Hot Topic
the belts.
problem.
I just think if you have a game and the explanation for fans of the game, if someone doesn't like it, and the base explanation, if you boil it all down, is you just don't know how to play it, it's probably a bad game.
Oh, yeah. So like Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, we're going to get into Kingdom Hearts?
I mean, we can, because I love Kingdom Hearts, and Chris doesn't. He fucking hates it, I'm pretty sure. And so I love bringing this up because listen, I'm going to go on record right now and say that nobody ever should have a legitimate reason to like Kingdom Hearts. But I do, and I will defend it. This is the hill that I will die on.
If you love Disney, you'd probably love Kingdom Hearts. I just find it very boring.
I don't know. It's so obtuse in such a way that I don't know. I'm pretty sure that I think it's Stockholm Syndrome. I think that's why I like it, but I can't be sure.
It might be. But it is a very obtuse. I'm in the middle. I loved Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. There wasn't a such thing as platinuming back then,
right?
A completion, all the secrets, all the best weapons, all the secret bosses, fighting Sephiroth in the Colossus, whatever, Underworld, and 2 with the Hades Underworld challenges, did all that stuff. I didn't play any of the other random offshoot 360 day and a half, dream drop, distance, sleep,
birth by sleep, yes,
balls and whatever,
yeah, dream drop distance, yeah.
I didn't play any of those, but I would like keep up. But when Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, I pre-ordered the Ultimate Edition, the metal case, the collectors, everything. I played it like an hour and a half, and I just felt so betrayed. And this is the shittiest game ever created.
What?
And so I hate Kingdom Hearts now because I felt that obtuse game. Like when I played it as a kid, that obtuseness I guess I could put up with, but as an adult, I don't have time for that shit. And the dialogue was so bad. Anyway, so I could feel both of you.
I'm not going to disagree with you. The dialogue traditionally has been horrible in pretty much every one of those games. But here's the thing, though, is Kingdom Hearts, and I could talk about this for way too long, so someone's probably going to have to stop me. But the original Kingdom Hearts, the storyline was very straightforward up until about the last, maybe a couple hours of the game. But by and large, Kingdom Hearts itself,
it was digestible.
It is. It's digestible, but it's a very self-contained story that if they had never decided to try to expand upon that, it would have been mostly fine. It's only when you get into Kingdom Hearts 2 really is where suddenly everything goes off the fucking rails and you start talking about, what the difference is between, a Heartless and a Nobody, and Xehanort being able to, I guess, time travel. And he's also
how many
80 different
Xehanorts are there?
People.
Yeah.
And so, that's when you start having to do the, getting red like lines and drawing things on a like a pegboard to try and figure out what the hell is happening in that story. But despite all of that, it's still actually one of my favorites, and I actually really enjoyed Kingdom Hearts 3. I thought it was beautiful. First of all, the game is gorgeous, and it was really fluid. I thought the controls were great. I actually, to this day, not that I have a lot of them, honestly, but it is the only game that I have platinumed. So that says something.
You loved it. Yeah, you really liked it.
I did, actually, quite a bit.
I'd really say starting with the 7th generation, though, of systems for Squaresoft, that was very evident that was their game plan, that you could never completely understand a game without looking up some sort of fucking FAQ or extended lore outside of the game itself.
Yeah.
Why do you think they did that?
To sell guides.
Sell additional games.
Yeah.
Make money. I don't know why they did it with Final Fantasy 13. That made no sense. And same with, 15, they were trying to get you to see their stupid fucking movie. But they have just been... They've been doing that over and over and over again ever since, like, the PS3. And it's just very irritating.
I know you guys are going to have a Final Fantasy VII episode come up, but I want to ask you, have you played the demo, and what are your thoughts on the remake so far?
So I have not yet, actually. I have it downloaded on my PS4, but I haven't had a chance to fire it up yet. I'm actually... I refused to play through the entirety of the original FF7, mostly for some of the reasons that Chris was mentioning a few minutes ago about how I feel like they made things just intentionally hard to find. So one of the things that irritates me the most on a personal level for video games are missable things. Like if there's something in a game where if you don't know it's there, you can never get it again in that playthrough. There have been times where I have stopped playing a game completely because of that shit. And so, like, that's part of the reason why I refuse to continue playing FF7. But it's one of my fiance's favorite games, so I am totally content to just watch her play it. But no, I haven't had a chance to play it yet. But the feedback that I've seen from some of the folks that we know is that it's seems to be pretty decent, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Chris, you there?
Wow.
Uh-oh.
Great timing, Chris. Good Lord. Great
timing, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, I'll blab while we wait for him. I played it, and I was really, for all the reasons we kind of touched on, the story and Final Fantasy 15 being a huge letdown, and other things about Square Enix that I haven't liked. I was feeling like I'd rather them not even remake it if it's just going to be a dumpster fire.
Well, yeah.
Like, don't tarnish it, like, because there's enough with the Tifa's Heaven mod on the PC. There's a NVIDIA or Google AI upscaling backgrounds you can download now, so the backgrounds are in like 4K. They look crisp. Mm-hmm. They're amazing. You can replace all the characters, all the models in battle, outside of battle. You can kind of do like a sort of remaster, and I had that all set up on my PC.
Yeah.
And I'm like halfway through it, and it's a good way to play the game. And all the confusion and lore, it's not confusing anymore because I've been reading about Final Fantasy VII lore and Advent, so it's not confusing to me anymore when I play it.
Right.
It's actually pretty enjoyable. But then when I played the demo, it was an interesting experience because when the movie pans out and it has the music and has like the recreation of the opening scene, but it's all way better, obviously now visually.
Oh yeah.
And the soundtrack's better, and the logo comes across, and the theme hits. I legitimately my eyes got watery. Like it hit it's like, okay, they've at least captured like the nostalgia enough where I'm having an emotional reaction.
Yeah, I know.
Like they've nailed it at least in that way. And then when I played the demo, I liked it a lot. It's like Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy 15 battle system sort of mixed. Mm-hmm. It's a little more it feels almost like playing a simple Devil May Cry action game.
Yeah, and I know that was one of the concerns that some people had, and by that I think mostly a lot of the FF7 purists. They were worried that moving to a different battle system was going to like ruin the experience or whatever. But from everything I've gathered, plus what you're saying, it kind of corroborates that it sounds like they actually struck a pretty good balance to where it's a little bit more interactive, I think, but still sort of keeps the spirit of, the turn-based system.
Definitely.
So.
It definitely keeps the spirit, and it has a classic mode, which I played around with, which turns it. If you're really purist, you can play it in classic mode. But I thought that the action mode was way better. And what they did a good job of is when you're young and you're playing these games and the graphics are really sort of rudimentary.
Right.
Let's admit him in. Your mind fills in the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was playing the remake demo, I'm like, this is really close to what I was imagining as a kid when I would like go to sleep and like I would imagine Final Fantasy VII in the world and the characters and daydream like that. I think they nailed it. I was really worried, but the demo was promising to me.
That's what I like to call the Ocarina of Time problem, where like going and playing Ocarina of Time like for the 3DS remake, that looks how my brain thought the game used to look.
Yes. Yes.
Where did I get cut off, by the way? Hello, everyone. I'm back.
We were actually just going to ask you about how you felt the Final Fantasy VII demo.
Yeah, if you had a chance to
then
play
I
it or
talked about
not.
how I felt while you were off.
Okay, so yeah, I went off on another one of those 30-second tangents.
Great.
Where it got recorded, but I haven't even downloaded it yet. To be honest with you, what is it? Yeah, what is it? Because I have limited room left on my PS4.
That's a good point.
I don't want to delete a lot, and because I still have the PT on my PS4.
Ooh.
Me too. I'm
trying to keep it on there. Something Shane needs to play. I need to bring it over to his house sometime. I need to play some PT. Maybe quarantine time will make good for it. We could call it QT. But
Boo.
But I haven't downloaded yet.
Hey, Dad, that was great. Hey, I laugh at all bad jokes.
Yes.
Keep them coming.
I like the fact that a lot of people like it. I do enjoy that. But I even told this to Shane back when they announced this. I think it was in 2016, 2015 when they announced it. I can't remember when. But I'm somewhat suspicious or hesitant to back a game that's going to be coming out episodic like this, because I had a feeling that Square was going to milk the shit out of this. I always did. I think there's going to be tons of DLC, tons of shit you're going to miss out on, and I'm still hesitant for that fact. And I'm all about the Final Fantasy series, and my first time playing Final Fantasy VII was the demo I got with Tobal #1 way back in the day. So
yep. That's a great memory. Tobal #1 for the demo.
Yeah.
That's why I rented it. Yeah.
The game wasn't any good, but the demo was exciting.
I actually like that game.
It's kind of blah. It's not bad.
Did you play the dungeon mode?
Yes, I did.
You didn't like the dungeon mode? That's all I did was play the dungeon mode. I didn't even play the fighting game.
It was meaty. I mean, when you already have played Tekken and Tekken 2, Tobal #1 was just kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
But again, I'm hesitant. I'm sure it's going to be a great game, just much in the vein of the Resident Evil remake and the Resident Evil 2 remake, and et cetera, et cetera. But again, it irritates me how long people were asking for this, because if the game that you're saying is the best game of all time needs a remake, how good is it really?
Oh, come on.
That's actually
I
a
don't
really good
think
point.
it needs a remake. None of this shit needs a remake. It's just that
that according to Final Fantasy VII fans, it did.
I guess. I don't know.
Heavily. Hey, you can want something so bad it feels like a need.
There you go.
It.
Yeah, and when you need something, that's a responsibility.
I'm excited. The demo played. I was telling him when you were cut off, when the opening movie plays and it's a semi shot for shot recreation, but it zooms out over Midgar and the logo comes up and the theme comes in. I legitimately got a little emotional, and I was like, okay, they're nailing it. Like they're at least tapping into that nostalgia pipe like pretty hard. And then as I played it
tugging on those heartstrings, man.
Yeah, it felt like what I imagined Cloud would move. Like when you play him, and I was telling him it plays kind of like a Devil May Cry, simplified Devil May Cry action game. You have light and strong attack and a stance switch, but then you can hit a button to do commands and everything goes. It doesn't completely stop, but it's like bullet time. So if things slow down, so you can make decisions in the menu, but then it's also an action game. I thought it was a great balance. It felt like what I imagined when I was playing it, like how I'd fill in the gaps as a kid. Like, oh, Cloud's the super soldier. He's infused with Mako. He's like superhuman, but he doesn't look superhuman when you play him.
So
you would make up the gap in your mind. And now the game actually looks like what I imagined as a kid.
yeah. So the Final Fantasy VII remake is for everyone who loved Final Fantasy VII. They just hated the fact it was an RPG.
That's a good point. And honestly, that's probably what they want, because they want it to make a lot of money. They've got to make it more mass appeal than just RPG fans and JRPG nerds. So that is.
It's just completely. It's antithetical to what Final Fantasy. I don't know. I'm not saying it's going to be a bad game. Please don't take that as how I'm saying it. But I don't get it. I don't.
It's not
get it.
It's not going to be the same experience as playing the original. Yeah, it's not going to be
No, but on some level, well, I would say on some level, for some people like myself, that might actually be okay.
But you like Kingdom
Yes,
Hearts?
Yes, I do, and therefore my opinion on everything is invalid. I know, but I'm just saying that I feel like I'm actually looking forward to this because I want to experience the story of FF7 with, besides just watching it, but I don't want to play the original game because it just it does nothing for me.
The original story is not that great either. So they're going to change it up.
It's decent.
What's that?
Yeah, they are going to change it. There's already some big changes in the story just from the demo.
Oh, see, there you go.
So yeah, they're definitely going to change it. I can kind of see where you're coming from. I love JRPGs, but sometimes going back and playing, even the ones that I think is like my favorite JRPG of all time is Suikoden 2, and I've played it like once a year for like 5 or 6 years. But now it's like I've played it enough. I can't. It's just they're too slow.
Coded?
I kind of like which one?
You said Coded 2?
Oh, Suikoden 2.
Oh, Suikoden.
Yeah,
I love Suikoden.
Suikoden 2 is my opinion the greatest JRPG ever made.
It's not
hands down.
I would agree with you. It is fantastic. I don't put it that high, but you are absolutely right. That is a fantastic, fantastic game.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite JRPG. But I was bringing that up. Even that game, which I do still play over, I've played it all the way through probably like 6 or 7 times now. I go back and I play it, and like the JRPG formula, like the structure of how JRPGs play, generally it's just turn-based combat, and how like the narratives would go to this town, talk to the right NPCs, unlock things, follow, do this, do that. Doesn't engage me as much. I'm kind of ashamed. Like I like that Final Fantasy VII Remake is not a JRPG. Because I've already played it as a JRPG a bunch of times. Now I'm playing it again as an action game, which I'm okay with.
I do think the type of JRPG that Final Fantasy VII was back in 1998, that you don't find a lot of that anymore unless it is in that retro aesthetic. Like, it just doesn't really fly. Whereas you look at you look at Resident Evil 2, and you can take that. You can essentially have the same gameplay. You're just having a different. You can put a really new, fresh coat of paint on it to make it feel like it's something completely different.
And also not tank controls, for the love of God.
Not tank controls, yeah.
Well, when you think about it, tank controls is just over the shoulder. That's what Resident Evil 4 was.
I just played the Nemesis demo. It's really good. It is kind of tanky. Like, you are slow. It's not like playing other third-person shooter games where you're really nimble. Yeah, it still retains that sort of sluggish, but that's what makes it scary.
Well, okay, for the record, I'm not talking about like the pacing of it. Like the remakes of RE and RE2 are fantastic, by the way, first of all. And
best remakes ever.
Yeah,
so far.
yeah, like that. Yes. That's basically the benchmark for remakes, in my opinion. But no, I mean the literal tank control, where like the original game, you would walk in the direction. Well, you'd walk in the direction that you were pressing, regardless of where you were looking, and that can be super disorienting. So having more modernized controls, but having the same fixed camera angles, which was a huge deal for the setting in that game, or those games, I should say. And basically, just like Chris was saying, having a really nice coat of paint on it and everything. They didn't necessarily have to do too much to tinker with it, but and I think that was to its benefit. And they turned out like amazingly well. Like, I just went through and played the Resident Evil remake fairly recently, and it was really good.
The GameCube one that got ported to PC and everything?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That one's good. I haven't played Zero. Like, there's a Resident Evil Zero which came out on the GameCube after the GameCube remake, and now it's on PC as well. But I have played the RE2 remake, and then I just played the demo for RE3, which was really good as well.
I'm trying to remember. Was Zero on the 3DS? Was Zero on DS?
No, that was you're thinking Revelations. It was on 3DS.
Okay, maybe that's what it was. Because I played those also. Those were actually I enjoyed those quite a bit.
And then there was Resident Evil Deadly Silence for the Nintendo DS.
I did not play that one. I played Revelations though.
Yeah. I will say this about...
There's a lot of offshoots.
Go ahead. I will say this about Resident Evil. What the fuck happened to Code Veronica? Like, that game, everyone loved it. That was
the best one.
Everyone loved it.
It's the best one.
Like, I'm not saying it's the best one, but forever, people said that it was a phenomenal game. And now, over the past couple of years, everyone's like, yeah, it was okay. But when it came out, and like for years after that, up until a certain point, everyone was just saying how great Code Veronica was. Now it just seems to get shit on all the time. What the fuck happened?
I don't see people shitting on it. It kind of got eclipsed by Resident Evil 4 from my perspective. 4 came out and became like the golden child.
But it was better than 3. And now that the 3 remakes...
I think so.
Yeah, now that the 3 remake is coming out, everyone's like, oh yeah, we all love 3. No, you didn't. No one loved 3. Everyone loved Code Veronica more, and they're asking, why isn't this 3? That was the temperature back then, so I don't know where the fuck all these people are coming from.
I have seen on like forums and comment sections around like Resident Evil 3 trailers and Reddit and whatever, people saying, I hope they do Code Veronica next.
Oh, yes.
So there's definitely, and they probably will if they keep making money off these remakes. Code Veronica I think it originally came out, or it was a Dreamcast exclusive, wasn't it?
It started out as one, and then Code Veronica X came out for the PS2.
Okay. I remember I didn't have a Dreamcast, but a friend had it, and I saw it, and it blew me away. And then I ended up borrowing his Dreamcast and playing it. It was, I think, part of the magic for me was it was a next gen Resident Evil. That's part of the reason. So maybe that wore off over time, the being wowed by the newest Resident Evil, and then people started sleeping on it. But I agree with you. Like, it was a big deal. It had a lot of hype when it came out, but everyone talks about 4 now. That's like.
Of course. You
can't say Resident Evil 4 sucks without being just laughed out of the room, essentially.
Well, see, and then like some games had the opposite problem, like Wind Waker. Everybody like fucking hated that game when it came out because they were just like, "What is this cartoon garbage?" And then years later, suddenly everyone was just like, "Oh no, like." I really love Wind Waker. Yeah. Like, you did not. Like, and granted, the HD remake for that one actually was done really well, but I just think it was funny because that one
for Wii U.
Exactly. Yeah. For the Wii U, yeah. And like that one totally did not get, I think, the praise that it deserved at the time. So I'm glad that people came around to it. But if you want to talk about games that you want to remake, because I could talk about that. Let's talk about Gauntlet Legends.
Ooh, the arcade, like a top-down beat 'em up kind of, right?
Yeah, so the one that was, so it's Legends or Dark Legacy, depending on which system you had it on. Dark Legacy, I think, was...
Wasn't it on 64?
Yeah, man.
There was a port on 64.
Yeah, Gauntlet Legends was on N64. It was one of the ones that we're talking about, like, so this and this one and Castlevania 64 are like my version of how you feel about FF8, because I like them and... they probably don't deserve it.
Yes. I actually liked so I was going to bring up Symphony of the Night because, one, that's how I was exposed to your podcast. Yeah. I found the Symphony of the Night episode. 2, it had a similar thing originally, like Wind Waker. It didn't do well critically in the beginning. Well, critically it did well, but sales-wise it didn't do well. Judging from, I think, from your podcast is where I got this information from. So if I got it wrong, either A, you told it to me wrong, or B, I heard it wrong.
Shit. No, I don't know.
Yeah, we probably fucked it up.
Critically,
it's
okay, I think from your podcast I learned critically it did well, but the sales, it kind of became a classic later.
Yes.
Because it wasn't, exactly. And I think that's the same thing that happened with Wind Waker. Maybe not as extreme, but I was going to. And then you brought up Castlevania 64, which, as a Castlevania fan, Symphony of Night's my favorite. But I also really like both the 64. There's a second one on 64.
Yeah, man.
Legacy of
I forget
Darkness.
what it's.
Yeah.
Yes, I like them, and people shit on those all the time.
There are two of us. Fantastic. No, like I'm literally the only person that I've ever talked to or met that actually likes Castlevania 64. Everyone else thinks it's a giant dumpster fire.
It is a giant dumpster fire.
It is, but it's like one of those. Like, there's a movie that me and my brother always argue about. It's called Ninja Assassin. I don't know if you guys have seen it or heard about it. It's really hokey, like action B movie.
Oh, I think I have seen it. Yeah, it's extremely gory and just
extremely gory.
Yes, I've seen like the opening 15 minutes of it. It's great.
Yeah, that's probably one of the best parts of the movie. Is just the opening scene. It's a terrible movie, but it's it's a terrible in a way that I love it. And that's how I feel about both the Castlevania 64s. Yes, they are clunky. But they're like something about, sometimes when something is so bad, it can become good. Like the movie The Room becomes a freaking famous for being such a terrible movie. Like they're so bad. I admit that they're bad, but for me, they're bad enough in a way that I ended up loving them. And I still can go back and play them and like laugh and have a good time.
Yeah, I still enjoy going back and playing Castlevania 64. Actually, that was one of the first ones, I think, Chris, if I remember right. I think that was one of the first games that we started playing when we started doing our Sunday streams. And
it's because we both. Well, it was one of the first episodes we did actually, because I had my kid on it, and because we both were like, "This game is bad, but it's so bad it's tolerable.
It's entertaining." Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys play the one? I think there's two of them. I'm sure Chris will remember. Your memory is like on point. There's two of them on PS2. I think one of them is like Lament of Innocence or
Lament of Innocence, and the other one is Legacy of Darkness.
I thought that's what you said.
I think you're right. I liked.
Okay, I thought that was the other N64 one.
No, Legacy of Darkness is the 64 one.
Oh, Legacy of Darkness. Oh God, it's the one with Hector. God, I can't think of it right now. I can look it up real quick. But
PS2, Castlevania. Lament of Innocence, I think, is the first one.
That's the first one. It's actually the first, chronologically, is the first in the series. And
yes. Now, I was going to ask about that. Is that canon with the one later that came out on 360?
Yes.
Because the first one, because Lament of Innocence is like a Belmont becoming Dracula, right? I thought that to remember.
No,
like
Lament of Innocence.
Remind me.
Lament of Innocence. So, Dude and his buddy go to try and recover Dude's wife, and Dude's wife ends up dying and becomes the vampire killer. She's like, her soul is melded into the whip. Spoilers, by the way, because Shane was being a dick about it earlier. But she ends up her soul ends up getting fused into the whip, and you find out that his buddy ends up becoming Dracula. Because his buddy was so resentful over the fact that his wife had died, and it wasn't his buddy's wife that died, so he lost everything and lost his shit. And yeah.
Oh, the second one you're thinking of is Curse of Darkness.
Curse of Darkness, not Legacy of Darkness. Curse of Darkness.
Yes. And I liked those ones too, and I remember thinking that I got the details wrong, but I remember thinking like, oh, this is the origin of Dracula. This is really cool.
Yes.
When it ended, but I thought the one on 360, which I never beat, where you played the guy at the red coat and the brown hair, Castlevania. It's like more of an action Devil May Cry type game.
Shadow of the Colossus. Castlevania Shadow of the Colossus.
Yes,
Lords of the Colossus. I'm sorry.
Shadow of Colossus. Yeah. That's also a great game, by the way.
It's great.
Lords of Darkness, whatever.
Yeah, Lords of Shadow.
Yeah.
That one, I didn't play it, but I remember reading like lore and watching YouTube videos. I thought that one was also about how Dracula became Dracula.
They tried, yes. Yeah, that was the one where Belmont became Dracula. Yes.
Also,
okay, so those two they're not connected. It's like a separate.
No, Lords of Shadow is non-canon.
Yeah.
It's non-canon. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's non-canon because the sequel absolutely took a shit on itself.
Oh God. Well, I was gonna say, for the record, a lot of people didn't. They were pretty lukewarm on Lords of Shadow, I think, overall. But I actually played that game all the way through, and I enjoyed it. I mean, it's
fine.
It was. I thought it was at least competent. Like, I enjoyed my time with it. As far as Castlevania games go, it's probably not one of the better ones, but I don't think it was as bad as some people made it out to be. The sequel, though, is terrible.
It's probably the best 3D
I've heard
Castlevania.
No, clearly that's Castlevania 64.
Okay.
I would actually say Lament of Innocence, probably the PS2 one. It's my favorite.
Listen,
I enjoyed it.
favorite 3D one.
It has a great soundtrack, too.
C64 has skeletons on motorcycles. Case closed.
Yeah.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
How are we going to argue with
Did you-
that?
You can't.
We can't.
Yeah, see?
You can't argue with something as illogical as skeletons on motorcycles.
And like 1878.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I hated, speaking of weird, wacky, people love this game. I did not like in Metal Gear Solid 2 the fat guy on rollerblades with bombs. I thought that was so outlandish and did not fit the boss. He's like a fat dude on rocket blades and he plants bombs everywhere. To me, that's the same as having a skeleton on a motorcycle in 1841, whatever the hell it is.
But
Just
way less
doesn't fit.
metal.
I mean, Metal Gear Solid 2 is just an exercise in futility anyway. That was... Yeah.
Not a fan?
Not really. I was one of those people that was very much affected by the bait and switch of Raiden.
Me too. I was upset about that.
Because I loved the demo, and I was like, I'm so excited for this, because I love the original Metal Gear Solid. It's probably up there in my top 10 games of all time. But the sequel, I'm like, okay, here I am, I'm Solid Snake, I'm sneaking around, oh, it's cool, he's still his cocky asshole self. Oh, and now I'm Raiden. Okay, so when am I going to be Snake again? Oh, that's not happening, is it? Oh.
And then you realize over time, like, am I ever going to be Snake again?
No.
And then you meet Pliskin and you figure out that that's Snake and you're like, oh Jesus, I'm stuck with this guy forever.
Yeah.
I beat it and it was weird, but I felt the same way. Metal Gear Solid 1, speaking of JRPGs, and Psycho Mantis fucked my mind because I was still young enough to not figure out how it was working.
Uh-huh.
And I had Suikoden 1 and 2. And you know how you can import your save from Suikoden 1 into Suikoden 2, and then you can, if you got all 108 characters, then you can get the main character from Suikoden 1 as like a secret character. Yeah. And I had done all that, and I had a complete save file on both of them. And when you have that, Psycho Mantis will read your memory card, and if you have any Konami games, he'll like make a comment. And he started talking about Suikoden and how I had gotten all this. I forget the exact line, but not only did he say, I can tell you love Suikoden, but I can tell you've gotten all 108 stars of Destiny or something.
Oh, wow.
And it freaked me the shit out.
I didn't.
And then I read later, it just reads your memory card and they have pre-written lines based on what save data you have. And he could only comment on Konami games because of like licensing issues.
Right.
So it would only work if you had a game from Konami, like a save block on your memory card.
Yeah.
And it got me. It got me really good.
The same with me. He said the same with me with Suikoden and Azure Dreams.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that game. That's a good one.
It's fantastic.
Did you ever play Alundra?
Yes. Not a lot of it though. Not enough to really comment on it.
Not enough.
Yeah.
That's one that I really like. That seems to be like. It's hard for me to find people who played it. People who play it usually really like it. It's a Link to the Past clone on PS1 that's
with devilish puzzles.
Yes, devilish puzzles. Speaking of Chrono Trigger, did you see Sea of Stars? It's like a Kickstarter announcement.
I have not seen that. I'm all about backing some Kickstarters, though.
I backed it immediately. It's the team that made The Messenger, that like ninja kind of retro game that came out recently. It's like a Ninja Gaiden type side scroller.
Yeah.
And they wanted to make a Chrono Trigger sort of like a spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger, but they couldn't get the funding as a new studio. So they made a platformer, made it successful, and then now they're making Sea of Stars, which is the original game they wanted to make in the first place. And if you look up the announcement for it now or later, whatever, I think you'll see, it looks really good. I think they've captured. Pretty sure it's called Sea of Stars. Let me double check. Sea of Stars Kickstarter. Yeah, Sea of Stars.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah, Chris loves Kickstarters. He loves spending money on things he might never get.
I've only been burned once. I've been burned once by a cell phone case actually.
Huh.
It's supposed to be a anyway, I got burned hard on an Indiegogo. But I backed Indivisible, which came out recently. It's like a Valkyrie Profile clone, which is another kind of rare JRPG on PS1. Did you play Valkyrie Profile, either of you?
Oh yes.
I'm familiar with it. I haven't played it.
It's It's a love-hate
amazing.
game. It's a love-hate game for me.
What do you? It's very slow. Is that what you hate about it?
No, that's not what I hate about it.
What do you hate about it?
The fact that if you do everything right, you fail, and if you do everything wrong, you fail. The only way to advance the plot. The only way to advance the plot is if you do things right and wrong. And so you could put 2 hours in, you could put like 20 hours in that game, and it's like, you didn't do this right. You're like, what the fuck didn't I do right? And it's like, well, sometimes you're supposed to send stuff up for Odin, but sometimes you're not. I'm like, what?
See, this is starting to to sound like the old Sierra and LucasArts adventure games, like King's Quest, where if you didn't get a certain item, like at the very beginning of the game, it lets you get all the way to the end and then gives a big fuck you because you can't finish it.
Yeah. So like it has this like approval rating from Valhalla, because you're a Valkyrie and you're trying to collect the Anheriar for Ragnarok. So
as you do.
Yes, I know a lot of
his memory. Your memory is on point with terms. By the way, you got a steel trap in that brain of yours.
Well, at least it's good for something, I guess. But
there's no room for anything else. Just this.
Yeah, exactly.
He even pronounced it right. I'm like, damn.
So like, there's if you do everything right, it seems like the incentive is to do everything right. Like you get these artifacts from completing these missions, which gives you more Anheriar for your party. And you're supposed to supply Valhalla with the Anheriar
enough
for the Battle of Ragnarok.
For the battle, yeah.
And supply these artifacts for it. And you're like, oh, I'm doing everything right. So I have like 100 rating. So you get 100 rating, and you get this battle, and it just kind of ends, and it's over. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, this can't be it. And you're right, it's not it. Because you have to maintain like a rating between like 60 and 70. So every once in a while, you're supposed to keep your artifacts, not send them up to Valhalla. And every once in a while, you're supposed to keep your party members, aka Anheriar, and not send them up to Valhalla. So it kind of makes Odin unhappy, but at the same time, you keeping him above being unhappy. So you have to maintain that like mediocreness of happiness. And then if you do that, then you get to fight in Ragnarok. And the game extends out about 10 more hours.
And I'm guessing they do nothing to communicate
I would say that is a very I know I liked it at the end because I beat it like I had the shitty ending. I did the same thing. Like I did everything right, read online what to do, and I liked that there was like a secret kind of extra point of the game that you had to get. I liked the game enough I replayed it and did it. But I could see how that would be. I also felt like the story was very much around, do you have control over your fate, or is it all predetermined? Like that age-old question. And it felt like you do everything right, and you still don't get a fight in Ragnarok. You still get sent back to sleep, and you're still a slave to Odin at the end. And it's futile. There's nothing you can do about it. And I maybe it's because I was a teenager and depressed, growing up in a hardcore. I grew up really Orthodox Mormon, which is like, followed this way, and there's only one way to do things, and you have to act and talk a certain way. Maybe it resonated with me with that, and I could see now in hindsight, though, feeling like you didn't, because it doesn't give you any hints. Like there's nothing. Like you would never be able to derive. You have to keep that rating between 60 to 70%. We just lost him without like finding about it online.
And see that's the thing, man. It's like that's what I was talking about earlier, where I just, that kind of stuff totally turns me off from things.
Pisses you off.
Oh yeah, for sure. But again, I think I could be mistaken about this, but I think Valkyrie Profile was right around that same era where that was kind of the height of that, where a lot of those titles, particularly like JRPGs and things like that, were designed specifically with those sorts of things in mind, and you could take the cynical approach like we have done in the past and say that it's to sell strategy guides, but the other way that you could look at that potentially is that developers were just responding to the fact that information was easier to get. It was starting to get easier to get. And so they were just intentionally trying to make their games more obfuscated and a little bit more obtuse on how to do some of those things to try to combat that. So, it could be that too, but at the end of the day, it was still irritating. That's like,
very irritating.
Even FF4, which I said was one of, probably top for me, I think, out of all the Final Fantasy games. There are some things in there that if you didn't know, you would totally miss it and you'd never see it again. Like one of the boss battles, you're supposed to leave the area, and then if you come back in immediately, there's like a fairly important and useful item there, but you would have never known that. And logically, you'd never have any reason to say, like, you know what, I'm going to go out and then come back in this cave. Like, who does that?
Yeah. I don't mind those things when they put hints in the game where you're paying attention, like you pick up a document or a dossier or an audio log or something.
Right.
And if you pay attention to those, then they give, and then there is some sort of precedent that, hey, you could figure this out if you were paying attention. Then it doesn't bother me as much of, like you were saying, there's like with Valkyrie Profile before you got kicked off, Chris, I was saying the issue I could see with that is there's no, oh, we lost him again. Motherfuck. Yeah, there's no hints. But I think if they put the hints in, maybe what they were trying to do, you were saying they're trying to make games more obtuse because information was available. Maybe they were also trying to give people like a sense of reward of discovering a secret and then getting rewarded. But it was just designed bad. They didn't give enough hints, so it's like no one could figure it out unless you knew somebody or you had the guide or something like that. And maybe it was just a bad attempt at trying to create that reward. Like when a Symphony of the Night, when I figured out how to get to the Upside Down Castle, it was like, oh, I got a whole nother. I'm only 50% done. Holy shit! It was an amazing experience. But there was hints in that game. You get the sunglasses, and there's like a description on them, and I eventually figured it out.
Yeah, see that? Well, because that right there is like that's some Dark Souls shit right there, where you just find stuff out from like item descriptions.
Yes, yeah, like way. And I think that if they have some of those things like that, and then you look back and go, you know what? If I would have been paying attention, I could have figured out that if I would have stuck between 60 and 70 approval rating, I could have gotten to the Battle of Ragnarok. But from my memory, Valkyrie Profile does not give you any sort of hints at all. It's just throws you into the the world, fly around, find people who are about to die, take their souls, send them to Valhalla, do it over and over again. Ragnarok's coming, and that's all it tells you.
Yeah,
and then you feel super betrayed at the end.
And
I get it.
I know I missed probably a bunch of conversation because my internet is bullshit and fuck AT&T during the coronavirus. I'm blaming the coronavirus for this because everyone's saying internet. But yeah, great battle system. And every single time you intervene in these people's end of their lives to recover them as an Einherjar, there are some very powerful storytelling elements there that you really didn't see at the time.
Then we got into this topic because of Kickstarter. So a game called Indivisible, which is like rips the Valkyrie Profile battle system. It's made by the people who did Skullgirls, is like an indie fighting game.
Oh.
I backed that on Kickstarter a long time ago, and it came to fruition. I didn't get screwed. That's the only game I backed on Kickstarter, and I didn't get screwed. So Sea of Stars, I backed. Hopefully I don't get screwed on that as well.
Well, I'm still waiting for Psychonauts 2 to come out that I backed on Fig. Is Fig still a thing? Does anybody know? I don't even know.
I don't know if Fig. I remember.
Yeah.
I thought I saw some recent footage of Psychonauts 2.
Yeah, it's there. It's still alive. It's just they're taking their sweet time.
That's a great game, by the way. A good retro game to talk about is Psychonauts.
Yeah, I keep telling Chris that we need to do an episode about that, but I don't think he's ever played it.
No.
You've not played it? It's
not.
good.
I've started
I don't know if
playing it once.
Go ahead.
I said I started playing it once, so... but not played it. I need to.
It's been a hot minute since I played it, so I'm not sure if it would hold up now.
It does.
But I have really fond memories.
I can say that it does. I played it a couple of years ago again, and it definitely still holds up.
Yeah, that's a good game. It's a really good game. All right, PS, I want to... Maybe we can go talk about... We're already like at 2 hours, probably. An hour and a half.
Yes.
Yeah, we're almost 2 hours.
PS2, sort of like Xbox era. What... Did you guys have those consoles, obviously, and what games stick out?
Well, so that was actually around the era where I actually didn't own either of those consoles. That was more of like my PC gaming heyday, I guess. Like my console ownership was largely I was largely a Nintendo boy for quite a while. So I like we said earlier, I eventually got my NES, and then I had a Super Nintendo. That was right around the same time that I got our first home PC. So I had like an SNES and a PC concurrently, and then I was really into the N64. And then after that, I was almost exclusively PC gaming for quite a while. Like, I didn't actually pick up a console again until, well, I guess technically probably the Wii. and then I picked up an Xbox 360 like towards the kind of end of its lifespan, and kind of went back and caught up on the back catalog. Yeah.
Chris, did you play any of the RPGs on 360? Because I started falling out of love with JRPGs like mid PS2. But there was a one on 360 that has always looked really interesting to me. So you play like an immortal guy, like dark,
Lost
long
Odyssey.
hair, and he's kind of tan. Yes, that one has always intrigued me. Have you played it?
Yes, I beat it.
Is it good?
I loved it.
Yeah, that one looks awesome.
So
That's the only one that's like makes me want to somehow play that game.
Based off your taste in video games, you're going to like it. You're not going to love it.
Sweet.
I'll say that.
I'll like it, but not love it.
You'll like it, but not love it. There's a lot of course, it's made by Hironobu Sakaguchi with Mistwalker. So it's more of it's kind of like if you took Final Fantasy 9 and you made a sequel to Final Fantasy 9 and you made it off the Unreal Engine. That's what you're going to get. That it's a Final Fantasy game.
I'm all right with that.
Yeah, it's fine.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, it has a lot of mechanics, and I guess they use the same team to make that game as the Shadow Hearts games. So, have you played Shadow Hearts?
I did play the first one.
So, you're going to get that element. So, there's going to be some timing elements in terms of, like, the battle mechanics. I found the first disc was absolutely fantastic. They have these little vignettes not vignettes, I guess, areas where you discover more about the backstory of the main character. And they're written by a professional novelist. And they are fantastically written. And it kind of drives the backstory for the main characters and the plot. I after disc 1, I didn't like it as much. I will say that. And it was interesting. It's the first game I had to boil a disc to play it. So there's...
To play it? Was it scratch?
I'm sorry,
you could
what?
boil a disc?
Yeah. So there's disc 4 in a lot of the games that were released for Lost Odyssey. There's a problem that it won't load up on your 360 naturally because of the way it was shipped. There's a film that ends up developing on the bottom of your disc on disc 4. So one of the ways of getting rid of that film is to put your disc in boiling water for about 3 seconds and then remove it, dry it off, and then it'll work.
Wow.
Okay, what I really want to know is who figured that out.
Who figured it out?
I don't know. But it works, because I did it.
I had speaking of Final Fantasy VII, I had a scratch disc that would pause on the scene when you're at the big freaking cannon town and the airship like lands. There's a cut scene where the airship like takes off and lands, and I could not get past that cut scene. I didn't try boiling my disc. I didn't heard that, but I tried like disc doctors. I tried everything I could think of, and I ended up. This is when I think I started questioning whether God or Mormonism was real. As I prayed to this Mormon God I believed in, I was like, I will read scriptures I'll do anything if you make this disc work. Like for however many hours I play Final Fantasy VII, I'll go to church. I'll do service. Like, and it was they teach you like if you really, really are sincere when you pray, like you'll get hooked up. And I did not get hooked up. That disc never worked. I don't know what. Anyway, boiling I would have. You bring that up like I was so desperate to play that game. I would have tried boiling the disc if someone brought it up.
I just feel like disc boiling might have been a very specific scenario for Lost Odyssey. I would not recommend trying that for anything else.
It's very strange, and I don't exactly. I wondered the same thing. How did someone come up with that idea? But it was because of the way it was shipped and the way that those 4 discs came in. And that's why you had to boil the disc.
That's super weird. I wonder if that's still a problem now, because like you can still get copies of that game.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Just look on any message board. Type in Lost Odyssey Disc 4 Boil, and you'll find it. It exists.
Right, so sentences that I never thought I would type into Google.
Exactly. Because that was my problem, and I ended up finishing it.
Google autofilled it for me.
Well, all right, there you go.
Yeah, enough people have typed it that it autofilled. I just said disc 4, and then like the third option was boiling water.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So,
but
sounds like you.
Huh?
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say Shane. So it sounds like he got the 360 late, so you missed out on the whole Red Ring of Death fiasco.
I did. Yeah. I have. Well, actually, I still have it. It's still hooked up in my living room, actually. But yeah, I have one of the newer black slim models. So I missed out on all that garbage and like. Well, speaking of weird ways to make things work, wasn't one of them like wrapping it in a moist towel or some crazy shit like that?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I missed all that stuff. But I did, one of the benefits I will say of being a patient gamer in that way is you can get a lot of really great games for super cheap getting them used. So like I went back and picked up like the Gears of War games and all of that stuff for like, a couple bucks each and got to play through all those. So I enjoyed that.
Oh, but
you're about go ahead, Chris. What you were going to say?
You're going to ask me about the Red Ring of Death? I don't know.
Hey, I was going to ask you if you, because it sounds like you had a 360 if you played Lost Odyssey.
Oh yeah.
Did you get the Red Ring of Death? You were an early adopter.
I wouldn't call myself an early adopter. I think I got it a year after it came out, but I did get one of the OG Xbox 360s, and I did get the Red Ring of Death. And I got it while I was on deployment in Japan. So it was not fun because that was my mode of entertainment while I was on deployment. So I got everything like the first disappointment was apparently Xbox can recognize what region you're in when you're trying to download shit. So I hooked up to the internet. I'm like, oh, I want to get this Halo game while I'm on deployment. And it told me, no, fuck you. You're in Japan. I'm like, okay, great. And the next thing I was like, okay, so at least I have my Guitar Hero here, because Guitar Hero was big back in whenever, like 2008, 2009.
Dude. So
and I was in the middle of playing Guitar Hero. I think it was Guitar Hero 3. And then my Xbox just shut the fuck down. And it was like in my second month of a 7-month deployment, and my Xbox just took a shit. And fortunately, everyone else's Xbox took a shit. So I was able to ship it off to Microsoft for free and get it repaired. But yeah, my primary mode of entertainment was my Xbox 360, and it took a shit on me in the middle of deployment, and it was bad. So that was my Red Ring of Death story.
That's the Red Ring of Death, that Business Wars podcast I brought up earlier in the episode. They talk about, so when Microsoft entered with the Xbox, the original, I would say Xbox One, but now there isn't Xbox One. The OG Xbox. Who is naming Xbox?
Not confusing at all.
Jesus, Xbox. Anyway, the original Xbox, they undercut, so they lost like $120 per Xbox, and they just wanted to get market share. I think they lost $4 billion. This is podcast alleges, but they still didn't get as much market share because the PS2, I still think, is the highest selling console of all time. Is it?
Yes, I believe that they have 160 million.
Yeah. So like they put all this money, they lost $5 billion, and they sold a lot of Xboxes, but they did not really take any market share from PS2. So for the 360, they did the same thing. They wanted to come out before the PS3, and then the Red Ring of Death thing happened, and to do all those replacements was like another $2 or $3 billion. Anyway, they were just talking about how deep Microsoft's pockets are and how much money they've lost, that they're alleging in this podcast that they're not even sure if Microsoft has really become fully profitable in the grand scheme of things until maybe this last generation. Xbox One didn't do very well either. 360 did really well overall after the Red Ring of Death came out. They sold a shit ton.
Right.
Yeah, I think the consensus now is that the 360 sort of quote unquote like won that generation, but then the PS4 came along and kind of took that back. It's a lot like it's a lot like the political system. It just kind of bounces back and forth.
Well, the PS3 ended up selling more total units than the 360.
Did it?
Yes.
Huh.
No.
And you want to know why? It's because Japan.
Well, that's fair.
That's
Japan
why,
doesn't give two shits about the Xbox.
Japan and Europe. So if you look at the North American sales, Xbox kind of dominated, but Europe and Japan really skew a lot of the sales when you reflect back and what was the winner, quote unquote winner of that generation.
Yeah. Well, and so
you're right. They're $1 million off. 12 million for PS3, 11 million for 360. total worldwide.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you were talking about, them, basically taking a loss on those, but for quite a while, that was actually just fairly common practice for most consoles. Like they would just sell at a loss.
PS3 did that for sure.
Yeah. And they were hoping to recoup on software sales, but we're actually at a point now with the upcoming batch of, the next generation of consoles that the sort of sentiment that I've been hearing around like the game industry and whatnot is that that's not really necessary anymore. Just with sort of the climate and the way things are with like technology and the cost of hardware, that they don't need to sell those boxes at a loss anymore. So they might actually start turning at least a little bit of a profit per console now, which I'm sure they're super stoked about. But
well, that's also why the PS4 and the Xbox One were so anemic at launch.
Yeah,
it's because they were making a profit out of the box. So that's why you have the PS4 Pro and the Xbox. What is it called? Xbox One X?
Series X.
One X.
Is that what it is,
just Xbox One X?
Oh, Series.
I don't know. Series
X is the new one.
It's the next one.
Yeah. Again, totally not
Microsoft.
Confusing at all.
No. But that's why you have the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, of course, because they were underpowered when they launched back in, what is it now? Holy shit. How long has it been? Like 2013?
A hot minute.
2014?
Yeah, something like that.
So when they launched, they were way underpowered. Like, you can get a PC now for $300 that just stomps the shit out of the PS4 and the Xbox One. And it's not even close. And you could, back then, you could get a PC for $500, $600 when those consoles launched, and they would beat them out. But so this upcoming generation, I think they do need to focus more on cloud computing and just cloud streaming, because you're not going to be able to compete with the PC games anymore. You could get a good PC system, and they're evolving so quick, they're just going to be able to stop them.
Well, I mean, but historically, that's been the case anyway. I mean, PCs...
No.
I think so. Like, for the most part, PCs, if you have the wherewithal to buy a decent PC, then a PC is always going to outperform a console.
No, I don't disagree with you in that sense, but if you go back to like the mid-90s, the PlayStation was on the cutting edge, and you were getting it for $300.
Yes.
You weren't going to be able to buy a PC at the same level as a PlayStation for $300.
No.
Right, but my point is that didn't last that long, though. No, I was just saying, my point is that didn't last that long. Like, I would argue that more time has gone by where you could feasibly get a PC with better horsepower than whatever they were selling in a console box. Yeah,
but that ended this generation. That ended with the PS4 and Xbox One. Because still, you look at the PS3, the cell processor is still a very powerful processor. You look at everything under the hood for a PS3. You had the cell processor, you had a Blu-ray drive, you have the Emotion engine so it could play PS2 games, it could play PS1 games, and they were selling that for $600, which was ridiculous. But at the same time, that was like a $1,200, $1,300 machine.
Right. I mean,
and they don't do that anymore. And it had a custom operating system.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could also look at it from another angle where, consoles now and going forward, like architecturally at least, are basically PCs now. I mean, that cell processor was like one of the last things that was just super weird. Like, developers hated working with the PS3 specifically for that reason, because it was so friggin' obtuse. But now that everything is under like an x86 architecture, it's very easy to do ports and things like that. So there's a parity, you're right, now where, you can kind of... You can't really go wrong regardless of where you're at, and really the only differentiating factor is exclusives, and even that's less of a thing, particularly now that Sony is starting to release their exclusives on PC.
Yep. That's I'm so stoked for Horizon to come to PC. I've always had I got into PC gaming like 6 years ago, and I've always just gotten the best video card. That I could afford at the time, and I'm thinking of playing Horizon right now. It's always been exclusives, and Sony's making this move, which kind of tells into what you were saying, Chris, about cloud computing. Why is Sony doing that, right? Because I think the reason the PS4s did so well this generation is because of exclusives. I think a lot of people would agree it's part of the formula. Yeah.
Yeah.
So why would they want to move away from that?
I think they're probably just doing a good job of reading the room, frankly. Like if you're looking at where things are headed, with streaming services and cloud computing and that kind of a thing, I think you're going to start relying less and less on exclusives to sell a box. I mean, if the idea is that you're going to make the majority of your money on software sales, then at some point, with the direction that the industry is headed, they'd basically pull a Nintendo and be behind the curve on a lot of stuff, and they would miss out on a lot of potential sales. I mean, as much as I love Nintendo as a company, as much as one should, reasonably love a corporate entity, they've historically made some really bad decisions and have always sort of been categorically behind on a lot of things. I mean, their online systems are still hot trash. I mean, the friend system is terrible. It's always been terrible. And I thought that the Switch was finally going to fix all of this, and it was going to bring Nintendo up into like the current friggin' century. And nope. No. It's still bad.
It's awful. But the Switch is selling like hotcakes.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I love my Switch, but there are some modern amenities that Nintendo, for whatever reason, has no idea how to implement properly. And it's not like they don't have a blueprint. They've got two other major console manufacturers that have gotten this right for at least 2 console generations, and they still can't figure it out. It baffles me.
That's a really. I've always wondered that about Nintendo. What is their hesitancy? They were hesitant about online stuff always from the beginning, and then when they do implement it, it's very, just not that great. And why? Like, I wonder what's going through their mind and why they're taking that position.
Because they've always been a proprietary company. They want to make money off of everything they do.
Yeah, they're incredibly protective of their IPs. That's why. I mean, I just read a story this morning that their Nintendo is now officially starting to go after anything that's been created in Dreams that infringes on their copyrights, which I think is which I think is insane, but it not entirely unexpected from them. So
they're not going to win that one.
No, they won't, but they're going to try. I mean, they've got deep enough pockets to at least try that. So
they're gnarly about that stuff. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this guy on YouTube called Kryzen. It's like XXY Kryzen. Mm-hmm. He uses Unreal, and he's making an Ocarina of Time remake, and he's like really far. And you can download it and play it, and it runs really well. And he has not gotten a cease and desist, and he's been working on it for like 7 years. I've been following this YouTube channel. And he has
That's actually really surprising.
But it seems like other Nintendo fan games get shut down way earlier.
Does anybody remember that Pokemon MMO that existed for like a month?
Yeah.
Yes. I remember seeing headlines. Never played it.
But before, like you say, you've been working on it for 7 years. Lest you forget the Streets of Rage remake, which was being worked on for 8 years. And then with notifications to Sega, like when they began development of it and said, Sega, I'm working on this. Is there a problem? They're like, nah, bro. And then after 8 years of working on it and the game was complete and released, they're like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? So
that's a good point. And then now they're making Streets of Rage 4, which is like an official sequel. And it's the guys who, there's this PC game. I always freaking forget it. It's like a Streets of Rage clone, but they use digitized graphics like Mortal Kombat. They're just like all their homies put in front of a green screen making up moves, and they built like this beat 'em up out of it. It's like, I can't remember. But they're the ones who are making the Streets of Rage 4 sequel.
I saw some gameplay. I think I saw some gameplay of it. And the Streets of Rage 4 looks interesting.
Do you not like the art style? The kind of comic booky?
I don't. I'm not a fan. We'll see.
You don't like it? Yeah.
I love Streets of Rage 2. That's my favorite game of all time. So I'm going to have to give this a shot. And Sega is making it, so it's not like Way Forward, which they'd be making a fantastic game. There's just something always off about the Way Forward games. But I have to give it a shot, and I'm really going to probably regret it.
Oh, actually, speaking of IPs that are near and dear to us, has anybody else seen the rumors flying around now that Sony might be sniffing around to try to buy Konami's properties.
Yeah.
Yes, I did see those rumors.
That's
a great thing to talk about.
I so hope so.
I hope so
Konami's
too.
the fucking worst. I don't want to see any more like Silent Hill pachinko machines, for the love of God.
Yes. So there's a awesome YouTube video. I've actually was thinking about linking it to you guys beforehand so we could talk about it because I want to know someone else's opinion. It's a conspiracy theory-esque about Hideo, however you pronounce it, Hideo Kojima.
Hideo Kojima.
Yeah. He that PT wasn't. He never actually intended PT to be a playable teaser for Silent Hills. He had already read the room and he knew that things were going to go south with Konami, and that all of that is sort of embedded in PT, and they go through like a timeline of tweets and they match all these things up. They make this super compelling case that PT is actually like a subtle fuck you to Konami, and I know it's going to happen, and like laying hints that like this whole thing was going to go down, and he already had the idea of Death Stranding is still working with Norman Reedus, and all of that is sort of foreshadowed in PT. I don't know, it might be like Kojima worship, and they're grasping at straws, but he made a really good, like, as he laid everything out. That's the problem with YouTube videos. It's not a back and forth. They can just like lay out their case and all their evidence, and you just finish the video and like, oh, well, that all made sense because there was no, like, you didn't.
Oh, there really are mole people. Okay.
I mean, you can make anything make sense if you really wanted to.
You can milk anything with nipples, fucker.
Yes, if the new Star Wars movies taught us anything.
I have not seen them.
God.
I've just lost interest.
You know what? Do yourself a favor and continue not doing that. No, but I mean, man, I listen, it's not because it's Sony or anything. I just really want someone to pick it up because, I mean, Konami has been holding hostage a number of IPs that are my favorites of all time, including Silent Hill and Castlevania.
I'd rather have Capcom steal it than, well, not steal it, but get it, rather than Konami.
Well, you mean Sony?
I mean, rather than Sony. I'm sorry, rather than Sony.
Like I said, I don't care. Like, yeah, Capcom might be a better fit, but I just want someone else to take it because they've been.
You just want them out from under Konami.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we've been surviving on some,
Metal Gear surviving?
Fuck off. Oh my God.
It's so bad it's good.
But no, I mean, for those of us that are like big fans of those series, we've been surviving off of, either fan games or Bloodstained or things like that, or anything that we can get that's like a spiritual successor or a love letter to those kinds of games. And damn it, I just want like another good Silent Hill. Like anything past Silent Hill 3, I will give The Room a pass because I actually enjoyed that one. But
I thought it was okay.
I thought it was an interesting experiment to like set almost the entire game inside of one apartment building or apartment room. It worked well enough, but the first 3 are definitely classics, and there are a number of reasons why they actually work well and why all of the sequels after that completely miss the fucking point. But that's like a whole other podcast in and of itself. But
did you play Shattered Dimensions on the Wii?
Oh, Shattered Memories,
the Wii or Wii U? Shattered Memories, yes.
So no, although I've heard that one's actually pretty decent.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's like number 1 sort of retold. I would like, if someone was getting in, if you're thinking about playing like a Silent Hill and you want to go back and play the original, if you're playing modern games, I would say maybe try Shattered Memories first because it's basically the same story as the original. With some liberties and just more modern gameplay.
Well, I certainly would never tell anybody to play the Silent Hill HD collection that they released with 2 and 3 because that's a train wreck.
Is it bad?
Dude, they hosed that up so hard.
But only if you played 2 and 3.
No, fuck off, Chris. No, they still made them bad. Okay, listen. Part of the okay, all right. Here we go. I'm going off on this now. It's happening, and it's all your fault. So,
my fault.
Yes, it's your fault. So, one of the things that was so great and atmospheric about the Silent Hill games, particularly 1 and 2, but it was also included in 3, was the fog. And there was a technical reason for that because the system had limitations as far as what it could draw distance. And so there was a very mechanical functional reason for why that existed. But as a actual sort of side effect to that, it added an atmosphere to that game of just this like claustrophobia and not knowing what was around the corner that was to its benefit. It's actually one of the reasons that those games work so well from that particular standpoint, storyline and plot notwithstanding. But in the remakes, first of all, they done fucked up and somehow lost the source code. So they had to reconstruct a lot of that game from, bits and pieces. So that certainly didn't help. But they also removed a lot of the fog because they're like, oh, well, this is an HD remake on newer systems. So draw distance isn't a problem. Except they never did anything to fix it. So, like, if you go and you play that HD collection and you look at those games, like, if you look out over the lake, in actually one of the first shots of Silent Hill 2, when you leave that like gas station bathroom or whatever, as soon as you walk out, you can look across the water and you can already see like where the textures cut off because they didn't render it, obviously. I mean, because A, they maybe couldn't, and B, they didn't have to because they had the fog in place. But when they removed the fog, they didn't do the extra work. The point is that those HD remakes are lazy. They're lazy, and they were a cash grab because Konami sucks, and that's the worst way to play Silent Hill 2 and 3, so I would never recommend that to anybody. Definitely just go back, play the originals because they still hold up like 100%.
It costs 100% more.
If you have a good emulator too, the PSX S2 emulator is like it's.
Yeah, I actually the last time I played Silent Hill 2 was on my PC on an emulator, and it worked just fine.
The cash grab remake for Final Fantasy VIII is similar. I know you guys don't like Final Fantasy VIII, but same thing. They like it looks worse than playing it on emulator because of the way the textures cut in and they didn't and. It's there's a lot of videos out there comparing the new PC HD remaster to the original and to playing it on emulator or the original PC release from like whatever it was 1990 something, and it's just a cash grab, really bad cash grab, which is weird because the Zodiac Age remaster is done really really well. But I don't know why 8 and 9. I played the 9 remaster on I think it's on Switch.
Yep.
Maybe my memory is
on
Switch.
Is,
yeah.
Yes.
It's got like the fast forward, like 2 or 4x speed, which is huge, huge convenience,
especially for that game.
During battles. Yes, that's a big deal. I think if you're going to play that Final Fantasy IX, I think the remaster is a good way to go about it. The Silent Hills. What about Castlevania is your other series? Did you like Bloodstained?
So, full disclosure, I have not actually played Bloodstained yet.
Really?
Yeah,
you need to.
So I didn't back it. And I'm actually.
What are you trying to say?
I'm glad that I didn't. Is what I'm trying to say, because I then had the option to get it on a platform that doesn't suck ass. Because the Switch version of that game is still terrible. But no, actually, I lucked out, and GameStop had a 1-day sale like several months back where you could pick up a PS4 copy of Bloodstained brand new for like $7.99. So I grabbed that. So I actually do have a physical copy of that, but I haven't had a chance to play it yet.
I have played Bloodstained.
Yeah.
I did back Bloodstained.
You sure did.
So I did. And we talked about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I will say this, it's a really good game. However, I got it for the Switch. And I recommend if you get this game, do not get it for the Switch. It's not that it's terrible. It's playable, obviously, but Jesus Christ, have I never noticed a game that is just, it chugs. I've never noticed a game that just noticeably, visibly, there's just times I'm like, this is underpowered. It was not made for this system.
Yeah.
And while I still to this day wish and was hoping I was playing this on the Wii U as I was advertised on my Kickstarter backer, and I dream of every single day because the Wii U is the best console.
Oh God!
Ever.
The problem is the Wii U's. The best Wii U's the best console ever made.
We can never get through a discussion without him bringing up the fact that he has a Wii U shrine in his closet somewhere.
It's everywhere. It's just not my closet. It's
the whole house.
I have a Wii U. I like it, but and I got the Wind Waker remaster, Smash, and I only had a handful of games.
Yeah.
I like the Wii U. It's kind of like Nintendo did to the Wii U what Sega did to the Dreamcast. Like, well, never mind.
Saturn.
We're over you.
Anyway,
see ya.
I only have a few Wii U games too, about 90. But in any case, talking about Bloodstain, yeah, people need to play it if they love Castlevania. It's Castlevania Symphony of the Night. That's all I can really say about it. It's the same game. So if you like it, play it. It's great. I love it. I
liked it. Yeah. I liked it. I don't know if I liked it as much as Symphony of the Night. That's more of aesthetic choices. I thought it was weird that you were like this super anime skimpy tatted up chick, but you're really like this demon with superpowers. I'm like, then why does she look like a fairy with these weird like the lore and didn't match the style to me. That was kind of weird, but the gameplay's fun. I got level 99 everything. I got the equivalent in Symphony of the Night. It's called the Chrysogram.
Yep.
I think in Bloodstain it's like the Vorpal something. Like you have to get 5 Vorpal blades and upgrade them. And I got like that super fast weapon and just crushed everything at the end of Bloodstain. It was fun. I liked it a lot. Definitely a good game. I played it on PC, so I didn't run across any chugging issues.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be the way to, or, well, actually I would just say any system other than the Switch is the way to play that game, probably. So
like the Wii U.
Sure, yeah, that. Why not? No, but speaking of Castlevania games, so my personal opinion, my favorites were actually the GBA titles. So like Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, and Aria of Sorrow. Like those 3 were probably some of my favorites.
There's no real disputing. I think they got better on the DS though.
Okay, so here's the thing with that, right? Is sort of, yes, but also Order of Ecclesia is like hard as balls. Like unfairly hard.
That's Bloodstained. Essentially, Bloodstained is Order of Ecclesia.
Great. Well, now I'm never going to play it.
I didn't think Bloodstained was that hard, but I also...
It's not hard. It was harder than I thought it was going to be.
It was harder than I thought, yeah. I got like if you know how each enemy can drop you a special move? You found a couple that were like really like basically cheesy, like just overpowered. And in fact, one of them I know they patched. The one that I used the majority of the game has been nerfed.
Was that Welcome Company?
It was like no, maybe it was like a chainsaw that you could move all directions and it just spun and did continuous damage.
Oh, actually, I heard about that because one of the other podcasts that I listened to, they were talking about it when Bloodstain came out, and they were saying that exact thing, that like they found that weapon and then just cheesed their way through most of the game, and then they were super bummed when it ended up getting patched.
Yeah. So my experience with Bloodstain was a little bit different. It was I cheesed through a lot with that game.
No, I don't know.
I need to play those Game Boy Advance ones. I've never actually, I hate to admit, I know everyone says when it comes to Castlevanias, those Game Boy Advance or the DS versions are the best. Hold on one second. Hey, you got to get out of here. I'm talking. You got to bounce. I'm almost done. I'll play with you in just a second. Okay? Okay?
Aww.
Okay. You can sit there. I haven't played those games.
Oh, they are really good. Yeah, you do yourself a favor and play those. Like I never
any way you can.
Well, yeah.
I'll probably do it on emulator. I have a Game Boy Advanced emulator.
Yeah, there you go.
Probably try it on.
Yeah,
that.
No, they are super solid. I hate using the term, but Metroidvania. But it's definitely that. And I'm one of those people that I know some people get really burnt out on that, especially now because a lot of the indie titles over the past several years have been going real hard on that whole like Metroidvania thing.
Bring them, baby. I'm not sick of it at all. I play every one.
So that's where I'm at. Is that particular formula? As long as it's executed well, I will like always play one of those, and those GBA Castlevanias are like, in my opinion, I feel like that's like the pinnacle, yeah, of that.
Dang, I really need to try them. What are some of the more like modern throwback Metroidvanias that you guys have played and liked?
So Hollow Knight, that one's solid.
Yeah,
played that. So this might be a little bit of an admission, but like I tried playing Axiom Verge. And I got like a half hour into it, and I have not gone back to it. I just, for whatever reason, it didn't grab me. And I don't know why, because people say that that's like a really great Metroidvania, but there's something about it that I just didn't do it for me. I don't know.
I'll be honest, I really haven't played a lot of modern Metroidvania games. I really don't even think I have a lot of them. I think the most recent one I played was Bloodstained. I can't remember the last time I really played a newer one.
Oh,
to that point.
Here's one though. Guacamelee.
Those are good. Yeah, I played. Guacamelee's good. I played that one. I haven't played the second one. It came out. Steam World is another one that's good. Hollow Knight.
Yep.
My favorite one recently is I don't know if you guys have heard of Blasphemous.
I have.
I've heard of
I haven't had a chance to play that yet, but I've heard it's pretty good.
Hey guys, I'll be right back.
It's pretty good. It's super it has the pixel art style is really dark, really gory, and it's hard. It's very, very hard. That's my only complaint. I think it's a little too hard. I think a lot of people will get turned off. The platforming is hard, and then it has like a Dark Souls mechanic where you reanimate at like a shrine, and you have to go back and get your stuff. Yeah. But the save points or the shrines, whatever you want to call them, are really far apart. And the game is like it's a slower paced game. So sometimes you're like, just fall on a super thing of fucking spikes. And you're like, dude, I got to go all the way back to this spot. Like, it's going to take me 15 minutes just to get here again. And that's a little rough. Other than that, it's a really good game. I was just thinking, Iconoclast is another one like Axiom Verge, is made by one guy. Yeah. It's pretty, especially when you know it's made by one guy. I think it's really impressive.
Oh yeah, definitely.
When you play it, it's super polished.
Yeah.
There was another one that I'm not remembering now. Oh, Strider. It's like it came out a while ago, but it was on sale on Steam for like $1.
Huh. Yeah, I haven't played that one actually.
It's pretty good. It's like a super fast-paced ninja Metroidvania.
Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. That style of game. That's probably one up there as one of my favorites for sure. Yeah. I haven't tried the sequel to Guacamelee, but I like 100%ed the first one. Like, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, they're good games. I want to wrap up pretty soon with, I want you guys to tell me, like, not your favorite game, but your like best gaming memory.
Ooh, that's tough.
Like the best, like, singular, maybe it was a night LAN party, a lot of times people bring up multiplayer experiences, which makes sense because you get the social aspect. Or a game that impacted you super emotionally, like the best, I don't know, the most strongest gaming memory or most impactful moment you've had gaming.
Oh man, that's tough to nail down.
It's hard. It's supposed to be hard.
So I think I know what mine is. There are a lot of pretty good contenders, but a lot like, it sounds like a lot like the other guests you've had on the show. Mine is a little bit more multiplayer focused, but I think the one that always comes to mind for me now is when I hit 60 for the very first time in World of Warcraft.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I had played. I was actually in the beta of WoW with my roommate in college at the time, because WoW dropped my first year of college, which was incredibly detrimental to my grades, by the way. And we were playing in the beta, and then we played from there. And then, I mean, I've been on and off, but technically I still play now. I'm playing Classic exclusively at the moment. But I distinctly remember I was home on break from college in my room at my parents' house at about 4 something in the morning, running Scholomance with a group. And it was on my rogue, because my rogue was my very first main in Warcraft. And I was in there, obviously, A, trying to level, but B, was trying to get my my Shadowcraft set, which was your dungeon set before you started doing raids for your tier 1. And it was a momentous event, because not only did I ding 60 in that run, but I also had the Shadowcraft cap drop off the last boss. And I had a heart attack moment because hunters are assholes, the hunter in that group, he was the party leader, and it dropped, and he typed in the chat, I will never forget this, he typed in the party chat, and he was just like, oh, that's leather. Hunters can use that, ... And that was one of the few times where I wished I could reach through the internet and strangle somebody. But luckily he was just bullshitting me, and he rolled greed on it, so I got it, and I butthole was unclenched and everything went okay. But man, but yeah, I was so happy that I finally hit max level with my first character, because back then leveling took forever, and it was several months before I hit 60, and so that was like a huge accomplishment for me. And WoW was my very first MMO, so that was like doubly so. So I think that one's mine. That was one of my fonder memories.
That's a really good one. It brings a couple things to mind. One, the South Park episode where Cartman and his friends level up.
Luckily I didn't have a bedpan or anything, so you know.
And then one of my other guests, he brought up his favorite memory was also an MMO, but it was Final Fantasy 11 on the PS2. When like you could get the modem, and how obtuse it was, and a similar thing. He actually got some gear stolen. He was explaining. I never got into Final Fantasy 11, so you guys correct me if I'm wrong. But like the server times would be different, and in order to get like certain raids, mobs would appear, and there would be like Japanese players would be there first, and it would like update for Japanese players before American players. Yep. Anyway, long story short, he spent all this time with his team, and it got like not only did the mob get stolen, but all the gear got stolen, and it was like one of his most devastating experiences. So you almost had that.
Almost, cool. Yeah. And it's funny that you bring up FF11 also, because one of my good friends was really, really hardcore into that back in the day, to the point where she like disappeared into her room for days at a time, and no one saw her. Kind of like hardcore into it. So I've heard stories of how FF11 went, so that definitely tracks for sure.
Chris, how about you? Have you had time to think of one?
Yeah. So the first one, the most stuck out memory I'll just give two, because one's kind of a joke. The first one is realizing I could play Super Nintendo games on my PC. That was a
like emulator?
Yes, that was a groundbreaking moment. I think it was 1998 or so when emulators were brand new, and realizing I could play Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy V on my computer, and realizing that I could do things illegally,
sailing the high seas.
Yeah, so that I think that was really a breakthrough. But I think the most memorable thing that will always impact me, and it's when I came to the realization. Like, I always made the defense that games were art, because games always had a story, and games always spoke out to me and a lot of other gamers. The realization that games were art was, for me, Shadow of the Colossus. I know we talked about this briefly earlier. But I'd just gotten it. I think it was, can't remember when exactly it came out. I think it was like 2004, late 2004. And just playing that game, the entirety of that game. And I go back and I wonder how I beat that game, because I didn't know how to level up my health or my stamina or anything like that. I just played it like straight stick the entire time, just because I had no fucking idea what I was doing. But something about that game made me realize that games are an art form, and that's what really, I guess, as a whole, made me realize that this is why I play games. This is why this is this form of entertainment. Yes, it's to kick back and relax and enjoy it, but it's also that there are things that gaming provides that other mediums can't provide. And just playing that game as an entirety, I would say that would be my most memorable gaming experience. Just because there are things that game did at the time and how they evolved the medium as a whole that I just haven't experienced in many other games since. So yeah, I absolutely love that game, and everything that game really did and how it spoke to me that I can't really equate to any other memory I have with a video game.
Well, see, now, like, Chris gives me this, like, philosophical answer, and I'm just here, and I was just like, I got fat loots.
I like... they both are just as valid.
Absolutely.
I can have... I have memories of both, like, right, where a game really changed. Like, you could say... I played Shadow of the Colossus. I had a similar experience where it just put me in a headspace that I hadn't really been before.
Right.
It's like the mood, the vibe, the way got my mind thinking about things, and like it would bleed into other areas of life and change how I thought because of and I felt kind of emotional when you're talking about it. It was reminding me of that game. I never played the PS4 remaster. Did you?
No, I haven't. I have the PS3 one. I played a little bit of that, and I played, of course, the PS2 original.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good game. Yeah, I'm glad you're the first one that's brought that game up. I think in all the podcasts, I don't think anyone's brought that game up before. That's a good one.
It's a brilliant game, and anyone who has never played it, there's so many different ways to play it, and they really need to. It's a masterpiece.
And the world is really well thought out. I remember, so I get in not a bad habit, but sometimes I just will read about like the lore of games and people who like spend all this time. Anyway, the Shadow of Colossus, it created this crazy cult community that was just ripping that game to shreds, trying to find every missing model, every missing texture, every little hint to that. And that whole, like, following that community and reading about this, basically journalists reporting on that community and just aggregating that information for me has also been like a weird enjoyment, as I've been following. I remember recently there was an article on Kotaku that was like this, I guess this one guy who's been digging around the source code of Shadow of Colossus said like he's finally just gave up the ghost. Was like, I can't find anything more. There's nothing else to find. This was like 12 years after the game came out. Like, I found every hidden secret Colossus model. I broke the map and went to that game is, you're not the only one, is basically what I'm trying to say. Like that game created an obsession in a community, almost like people talk about the Dark Souls community, which is a part thing that I'm in, and but that pales in comparison to the people who are into Shadow of Colossus. Like that community is like that. It's almost like a religion.
That's funny because I was actually just about to bring that up about the Dark Souls thing. Because like after I got into the Dark Souls series, which I came into it a little bit later, I actually hated that game to start, but then I came back around to it and I fell super deep into it. And actually, they're some of my favorite games now. And after I finished playing through all three, man, I went on this really deep dive into the lore for quite a while. Yes.
That's how I was with Dark Souls 1. I mean, Dark Souls 1, I had kind of the experience you're describing with Shadow of Colossus, where it wasn't, I mean, they're not really the same in a lot of ways, but the sense of there's no explanation and you just feel like you're plopped in the middle of a world that's all fleshed out. You don't know the details, but you know everything has been fleshed out, and you can feel it. Just in like,
it feels
I don't
lived
know,
in,
like a sense.
The world building in Dark Souls is incredible.
And the thing about the world building in Shadow of Colossus, and maybe you correct me because I haven't played Dark Souls, so if I'm completely off on this, just let me know. Souls is complete. I mean, Shadows of the Colossus is completely implied. Yeah, there is no, there's no narrative.
Yep,
it's go kill the thing, and then once you kill the thing, every time you kill something, there seems to be something wrong every single time you do it, and that's where the ending comes in. There's no real narrative, no exposition, other than go kill the thing.
Yeah, no, and that's very similar, to Dark Souls, because like there's no, huge long expositional dialogues or anything like that. Like, and I think that's part of what makes the world feel so real and so lived in, like I said, is that you kind of enter into this world and anybody else that is still alive or that is in this world just acts like you should already know a lot of what has happened.
Yes.
And so like you need to find it out as you go along, either by reading like the flavor text of items you pick up or picking out pieces of dialogue, that people say to you or things like that, or just, experiencing the world itself. And it's so well done.
Contextual hints, like you'll look at just like the space around a character, what items are laying around, what's their living space, and you can draw clues from that. It's very similar. Shadow of Colossus is a little more, I would say, less implied because you don't have text like descriptions on items. Right. So you get a little bit more sort of scaffolding to build on with Dark Souls, but they're both very, very similar. And I think that's the same thing. I went down a deep dive on Dark Souls lore. I've also gone on a deep dive down Shadow of Colossus lore, not war. And what surprised me with both of those is how attentive people are to the games and how they figured it. Because I would never be able to figure everything out. Someone else has to do the work and explain. Yes, in Shadow of Colossus, when this happens, or when you kill the third boss, the line is this, and like they put all these things together, and there is a story to be found.
Yeah.
But you really have to pay attention and sort it out. And luckily, other people smarter than me kind of helped me do that. But it made it super enjoyable.
Yeah, actually, I'll even do a quick shout out to you. You might be familiar if you went down that same rabbit hole, but there's a YouTuber called Vati Vidya, and that's like basically his whole channel is talking about the lore behind Dark Souls and Bloodstained and like that whole sort of implied shared universe, which actually is part of some of the stuff he talks about anyway. But I
haven't heard of him. What's it called?
Vati Vidya.
His YouTube channel?
It's like VAATI, I think VIDYA or something like that. I'll link it to you, but okay. Yeah, he does an excellent job of like going through all of this stuff and even comes up with a lot of his own sort of theories on some of the implied lore based on sort of the bits and pieces that you get in the different games and kind of like connects them together and everything. It's super interesting.
Oh, dang. Yeah. Go ahead.
By the way, if the never-ending story ruined your childhood with a certain moment, the Shadow of the Colossus wants you to revisit that.
Atreyu.
I did watch Neverending Story. What moment do you speak of? I don't know if I'm catching. I get mixed up. When the horse. Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Okay, we're caught up now.
Or Atreus or whatever his name is. The quicksand shit. Yeah. That movie, by the way, I'm glad you guys brought it up. I bring that movie up with people who are similar age. I was born in '85 as well. People don't know it.
What?
I'm like, how do you not know that movie?
It's not talked about anymore. No one talks about that movie anymore.
It's a shame.
It's almost lost the time.
Yeah, people talk about Goonies and Princess Bride, but they don't talk about Neverending Story.
No.
All right, let's talk about the Page Master. Let's go down that route. How about we start talking about
Macaulay Culkin, animated Macaulay
Hell
Culkin?
yeah.
Can't go wrong with that.
That way, Michael Jackson could have preserved him forever.
Oh, well, on
That's
that
a good
note.
one. That's a good one. Wow. Speaking of, have you guys seen Leaving Neverland? That hurt my soul.
No, I have not. I feel like I probably don't want to.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I like his music too much. I'm gonna.
Yeah. It's between that and some of the other cases, it's just like it's kind of like, man, it's really hard to think that not at least some of that stuff has some merit to it. It's a rough one. Although I think it's either Louis C.K. or Chappelle has a whole bit defending Michael Jackson.
That was Chappelle.
Pretty good.
That was in Sticks and
Chappelle?
Stones. Sticks and Stones.
Yeah. It's pretty good. I think he does a good job of well, whatever. It is what it is. Never-ending story. That horse scene, and then also the freaking wolf in the cave. It's like in the beginning of the movie.
Oh yeah.
Am I getting my movies mixed up? There's like a wolf with green eyes in a cave that attacks him. That scared the shit out of me as a kid.
I need to revisit those old 80 movies. I need to watch The Dark Crystal again.
Yeah, you do.
That movie makes me feel all sorts of weird.
Dark Crystal's so good.
That's some weird stuff. The Netflix series is, I watched a few episodes. It was interesting. It didn't catch me enough to stick with it, though.
Labyrinth's better.
Bullshit.
Hey.
You didn't say no.
David Bowie's giant penis.
Oh, listen, if your only argument is the Goblin King's codpiece, then I don't think that's a solid enough argument. That's all I'm saying.
It has better acting. And the characters don't look as weird.
Listen, the Dark Crystal was an achievement in puppeteering, and I will thank you very much not to besmirch its name.
I'm besmirching it.
That new tactics game, though, that came out for Dark Crystal is hot garbage. So don't do that, though. That was a bump.
I read some really bad.
Yeah, I was super bummed about that because I wanted that to be good. I was like, what? Dark Crystal and tactics? That's like two of my favorite things, and it's bad.
Good tactics game. We're due for another tactics game. There hasn't been
people.
Let Us Cling Together, I think, was the last good one.
You guys tried Disgaea? People talk really good.
I'd love Disgaea.
Disgaea, is that how you say it? How many of you played? Because there's like a bajillion of them.
I actually started playing it with the first one. on the PS2. It actually got me back into video games, unfortunately for my wife. I was like really down and out on video games, and I got a PS2, and my friends like, try this game out, it's fun. And then all of a sudden I was a weeb again. I was a born again weeb. And
never doubt your Lord and Savior again.
So I got into Sky and got into Sky 2. I didn't get into the whole entire level into 9,999 vibe. I just kind of went through the plot because I thought the plot was so goofy and enjoyable. Even though I understand that's not the point of the games, but it's just it's so charming and endearing. I can't help myself, but that's why I love those games. Is because they're so over the top and ridiculous. And when you compare it to Final Fantasy Tactics, where it's like, hey, go kill Jesus, and then you play Disgaea, and it's like making fun of that, but it's not. It's so refreshing, and I love it.
I should try it. I mean, people speak really, really fondly of all those games. The Disgaea 5 was on sale on PC, but I'm like, everyone always talks about the first two more. I don't know if I should start out with number 5, so I didn't snag it. It's also on, I think they're on the Switch, too. I think all of them are on the Switch.
I think so. I think they all can be obtained pretty easily, and they have, I think 1 and 2, they have complete versions. There's a sequel to 1 that you can get on the PS4, I think. I don't know if it's PS4 or PS3. But they're all pretty affordable. And if you have all the old consoles, you can get them. And of course, I would go for anything with Laharl in it. Like Disgaea 1 and Disgaea 2 and Disgaea 1 Complete. Because Laharl's the shit.
Hey, by the way,
I wanted to ask a couple more RPG questions before we wrap up. Did you guys play any Breath of Fires?
You know what? Chris, why don't you go ahead and...
I've played Breath of Fire 3 and 4.
Me too. Those are the only 2 I played.
I have not. Yeah, same here. I didn't play 1 or 2. I tried playing 1 and 2. I just think they're too slow. And I think if I played them back when I was originally playing RPGs, I would have enjoyed them more. I just didn't. 3's really good. It just felt directionless. And I didn't remember it being that way. Because I remember when I was playing 4, I'm like, man, this isn't as good as 3. 3 is so much better than this. And then when I was playing 3, I was like, I am so totally wrong. 4 is a much better game. But, I loved...
We've almost had the exact same experience. I played 3 and 4, loved them both, thought 4 was worse, and then when I went back and played them again, I thought 4 was better.
Right. And 4 looks better. Its plot is a little bit more coherent. There's more of a driving force. And I did we have something called a rapid fire review on our podcast for our Patreon subscribers. And I did a review of Breath of Fire 3, and Shane captured everything perfectly. He broke it down to one simple sentence. It's like, a review of Breath of Fire 3 is, God, what the fuck? And that's entirely that's the plot of Breath of Fire 3.
Pretty much.
It's weird, too, because in a way, Breath of Fire 3 kind of normalizes, or at least justifies genocide. And I found that very off-putting. And, if you read between the lines, the main bad guy in the game commits genocide against an entire race of people. And at the end, they were like, yeah, we can kind of understand where you're coming from. And I'm like, that's terrible. That's the worst thing I'm seeing here. It's an interesting game. It's fun. It has some good elements, and I always love the Breath of Fire 3 games. I mean, the Breath of Fire games. But they're just, I don't know, they're not for everybody. If you're a fan of the more bombastic RPGs that were released Final Fantasy 7 and afterwards, you're probably not going to enjoy them as much.
Yeah, I could see that. What about the other one other RPG series I wanted to get your just quick rapid fire review on is Persona.
Oh my God.
Can you have a short response about Persona? I don't know if that's possible.
Can I have a short response?
No, I just mean the general you.
No. The games are 150 hours alone. Okay, before I go into long, hopefully not too long.
Please don't.
Shane, have you played any of them?
Now, I don't know if anybody has noticed, but like for the vast majority of this JRPG talk, I have been tapped the fuck out because I have certainly played some of them, but like I said earlier, like a lot of my RPG experience has been more in the Western stuff. So like if you start diving real deep into these, I'm just like, I got nothing.
I'll try.
We could one we could talk about. We'll go back to Persona. Did you play Dragon Age or Dragon Age Origins?
I did.
Yes.
Or Inquisition?
Yeah.
Very good.
We could talk about Inquisition. Yeah, let's do Persona, Inquisition. Then you guys can drop all your information about your podcast, Patreon, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, so Persona. I was initially introduced to Persona back in the PS1 days. I played the PS1 release. I got that when it came out, and
me too. Good.
I did not like it. I did not like Persona 2. Was it Innocent Sin? Was that the
Innocent Sin, and then there's the other like Heart of shit.
There's two versions of there's two versions volumes. I won't say versions. Volumes.
Eternal Punishment.
Eternal Punishment. That's what came out in the United States. Is Eternal Punishment.
Yes.
Didn't like it. I think that was just because it looked like a 16-bit game, and I was a little bit of a graphics whore back then. Not a total graphics whore, but I was a little bit of one. I judged.
Yeah.
And didn't enjoy it very much. I still try to go back, and I still can't. I can't really get into it. But then Persona 3 came out, and it blew my fucking mind. I loved Persona 3. Didn't finish it on my initial playthrough, but absolutely adored it. Because I think it was one of those games I had to stop playing because I went on deployment. And then I came back, and I was about to transfer up to Great Lakes, Chicago, to go push boots for a couple of years. And I got Persona 4, and I played the shit out of Persona 4. I beat Persona 4, and that is another fantastic, fantastic game. Played Persona 5. Again, another funny thing. Came back from a deployment. Came back from Diego Garcia when I started playing Persona 5. And I adored that too. So the entirety of that series, 3, 4, and 5, I will defend to the grave. Those are some of the finest RPGs experiences that you can find on the planet right now. If you just like... First of all, you have to be a little bit of a weeb, because if you're not...
Wow.
Definitely.
You're not,
what a surprise.
You're not going to get into it. Yeah. But in terms of gameplay, it has a really good balance of what's difficult and simplicity. And I do think it can get too easy once you know what to do. But I will say I loved it. So much character development, so much charm. So you could tell there's a lot of love put into that game. Developing it, you can tell there's a lot of care. There's not much more I can say about it. It's just a fantastic series, and I don't know. I'll just say, what's Yukio, best waifu in Persona 4. I know a lot of people hate her, and I'm sorry.
I agree. I would agree.
I'm not even going to argue. She has the best dungeon, and the music, especially if you got the soundtrack CD, it sounds like a fucking strip club, and it should. So there you go. Love it.
Big fan of those two. I figured you would have played them. I did the same thing. I actually played 1 and 2, but I liked them. I liked in 1 how you would have like third person, and then you'd also have first person sections, like when you went to town and shops. And I just liked that everything was based on like demons, and I like the idea. It was like me. It felt like, dark and dark and adult for a 13-year-old. I'm like, oh, this is so cool.
Edgy. That's why I got into it as an angsty teenager. That's why I picked it up, because like, oh, there's demons and shit. Yeah, this is gonna be cool. It's dark and moody. And then I played him like, oh, I don't know.
It's very. The other thing that I would say, I like anime. I watch a lot of anime, but I tolerate a lot of anime to enjoy some other parts of anime. Yeah. And if you depending on how much sort of cheesiness and weirdness of anime you can tolerate, Persona may or may not be but I don't think Persona is like, it's not that bad compared to like other animes that I've watched, like the whole series, where I roll my eyes and kind of put up with 30% of it because the story and the action is really cool, and I just sort of tolerate the rest of it. I don't think Persona is is bad. Like maybe something because it's a video game and doesn't offend me as much. But I didn't roll my eyes. Persona 4 is the one I played the most of. I like completely. I don't even know if there's a platinum for that game, but if there was, I would have gotten it. I did everything in that game.
There might be for Golden because it was on the Vita.
For Golden, yeah, I didn't have Golden. Yeah, good games, but Western RPGs I also got way into. And another one I wanted to bring up was I didn't play Dragon Age Origins, but Inquisition was a big game for me, and I figured. Maybe that's something Shane had played.
So Inquisition, no. I actually I own it. I just haven't played it. It's on the giant and ever-growing backlog of games that I have. But
don't we all?
Yeah,
have?
it's
yeah. We all have
Steam.
a backlog.
I think I got like 400 something things on Steam. But no. So actually, just the BioWare RPGs in general. Actually, those were really big for me. Dragon Age Origins for sure, but I think honestly the ones that hit more for me personally, definitely Knights of the Old Republic. That game is amazing, and it's actually one of the few games, like RPG or otherwise, that I have played through multiple times from start to finish purposefully just so I could see how the story played out differently.
Can you say the game again? You cut out right when you said the name.
It's Knights of the Old Republic.
Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sweet.
so I played through that game the first time, to completion as, a light side character, basically, because if you're familiar with the BioWare games at all, you know that a lot of that stuff is, there's a morality system of some kind, and the dialogue trees that the choices that you make will affect your character's morality one way or the other. And of course, because it's Star Wars, it's a light side or dark side. And so I went a almost pure light side route the first time through. And then I wanted to play it again, so I started from scratch and played through the game all the way again and just was a complete Sith asshole the second time through, just so I could see how things changed, because that game and like that world that BioWare had built had just sucked me in so much. I'm still waiting, and I've heard rumors that they are working on something Knights of the Old Republic related.
There is rumors.
So
yes.
I want to see Darth Revan in something because he absolutely deserves it. But yeah, Knights of the Old Republic was a big one, definitely. Dragon Age Origins, I definitely played that one. I came to it a little bit later, but I played that one all the way through, and I've always been a really big fan of, BioWare just in general up until recently. But just the way that they've structured their games, the deep dialogue choices and things like that. I know that bothers some people. If you're not into standing there and having your character talk for like 5 minutes at a time with somebody, then BioWare RPGs are probably not going to be your jam. But I have always been really intrigued by that and like how the interplay between the characters works out and the choices you make and how that affects how the story goes. So yeah, like though a lot of those specifically were pretty big to me. I mean, of course we mentioned, like Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But,
did you ever play, they had one that came out after Knights of the Old Republic on Xbox called Jade Empire?
Yeah, Jade Empire is really good.
I need to play that.
Yeah, I like that one's good. That's one of the few ones. I couldn't get into Knights of the Old Republic, but I did get into Jade Empire.
Yeah, no, Jade Empire is definitely another solid one. I think was there an HD thing for that, or did it just get re-released? I can't remember. I think it was just re-released on platforms.
It's on Steam.
Yeah. Well, if it's on Steam, I'm sure there's probably some sort of like mod for it if you went looking.
Mods for it, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, man, during that time and for quite a while, like while Chris and I guess presumably you were probably getting into a lot of the JRPG stuff real heavily, that's kind of where I sort of tracked more, was just a lot of the more westernized RPGs.
Makes sense. Well, I'm gonna piss my pants. We've already been at like 2 hours. I've been drinking this whole time, so I'm like, I have to pee my pants. I'll put all these links in the podcast description and all that stuff. But tell people where they can find you, Patreon, all the different options.
All right.
Give them a rundown where all that's
I
at.
get to do my
Shane.
spiel. Fantastic.
Take it away.
All right. So, in the interest of brevity, as we mentioned, we are the Retro Hangover podcast. So we're basically on most social media. So if you just search for Retro Hangover, you will find us. We're probably most active on Instagram, and by proxy, I guess Facebook. But Instagram is probably the best place to find us. We're also on Twitter. We cross post all that stuff. So definitely check that out. As far as the podcast itself, you can pretty much find that anywhere. I think we're on just about every major podcast platform / podcatcher at this point. So you can just look us up. We do have a Patreon, as we mentioned. So if you check us out and you do happen to like what we do enough that you actually want to give us money because you're crazy, then please feel free to go over to bit.ly, bit.ly/rhpatron. That will bring you to our Patreon page. And if you donate at the 16-bit tier or above, that will give you access to our bonus audio content, which Chris had mentioned a couple of times, like our rapid-fire reviews, outtakes from our recordings, and things like that. So definitely check that out if you think it's worth your while. We also do have a merch store, so if you want to go buy a shirt or a mug or something like that, you can head to bit.ly/RHP merch and check out some of the stuff there. But yeah, I think that's the plug. I think that's all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. You guys are dope as shit. Thanks for coming on to my brand new teeny little shitty podcast since you guys been doing this forever. I've been trying to reach out because I've just been like homies. I did music all through my 20s, and a lot of the guys I produced and toured with play games. So I've had a ton of musicians. Yeah. I've had some like game developers on, but I was like, you know what I need to have some other dudes. Well, I shouldn't. It could be female too. I'm just look. Probability is. Yeah. Probability wise, if I had to put my money on as someone who is a nerd like me, they're probably going to be a dude as well. So I get a pass on that one. But find other dudes who podcast about video games, and I started researching. Found your guys' Symphony of the Night episode. Started stalking you on Instagram. Their Instagram is awesome. Their posts there's like a whole world of like collector Instagrams, and I don't get sick of any of them. Like I don't ever get sick of seeing pictures of video game shit. Like it's I don't know. I like it. And you guys have a great page. You've posted. What was it? One, I think you posted, there was a Suikoden post, and there was another one that set me off. I was like, Parasite Eve, which we didn't talk about. Oh, yeah. You guys, one of you posted about Parasite Eve, and I was like, these motherfuckers are legit. I need to reach out to them.
Well, thanks. It's not a shitty little podcast. You've done a great job of listening to a couple of your shows, and you've been a most gracious host. You've been fantastic in directing the conversation. So
absolutely.
Thank you very much for having us on. This has been an absolute joy and blast. I've fully enjoyed myself this entire time.
100%.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I appreciate it. Try to be fun. All right, guys. See you later. Peace.
Bye.
Alrighty. Thanks for listening to the entirety of the episode. Thanks again to the boys, Chris and Shane, over at the Retro Hangover podcast. Again, all their shit in the applicable podcast descriptions. Next week, we have Denny Huntsman, another jiu-jitsu school owner, legitimate black belt, all-around badass. He will be on the podcast next week. Until then, stay safe. Don't get the Rona. Do some shit at home. Play some game. And this is I can't think of a better time to catch up on your backlog than right now. Spread the good news of the Gaming Memories Gospel. The Lord will bless you. I'm not going to promise that if you follow me, the prophet, you're not going to get the Rona, because I'm an honest prophet. I tell the truth. Just because you follow me doesn't mean you're not going to get the Rona. You're going to get the Rona. But at least you'll be entertained while you have it by listening to me, the one true gaming podcast prophet. Until then, love you all. Stay safe. Have fun. Bye-bye.